The Lycan King's broken mate. The branches clawed at Seraphina's arms as she stumbled deeper into the forest, the sting of fresh welts throbbing beneath her thin sweatshirt. Moonlight slipped through the canopy in silvery slashes, turning every breath into a ghostly ribbon of mist. She pressed herself against the rough trunk of an oak and closed her eyes, willing the pounding inside her skull to quiet. But the memory of her father's fist landing against her ribs replayed in a relentless loop. She'd thought him finished when he yanked her by the hair and hissed, "A creature like you should have died with your mother." Yet the final blow always came when she believed there were no more left. Pain shot through her side even now, and she wondered if something inside had cracked for good this time. It wouldn't change anything. Broken bones healed. Her father's contempt did not. She lifted trembling fingers, searching for her wolf the way a child might reach for a nightlight in the dark. There was only a dull, echoing silence inside her chest, an expanse where another presence should have stirred, offered comfort, offered rage, offered anything. She tried again, whisper thinking, "Are you there? Please." But the void swallowed the words whole. A night owl hooted overhead, and she flinched as though it were a command to move. She couldn't stay out here long. If Leon discovered she'd run, the next punishment would come with an audience. He liked lessons to be remembered by the pack. Worse, they remembered them too, yet none ever spoke up. Not when she'd been 13 and bled onto the training ground gravel. Not when she'd collapsed after taking his drunken blows for her brother's mistake. Always. The same averted gazes and lowered muzzles. Drawing a shaky breath, she pushed away from the tree. Her legs quivered like saplings in a storm, but she forced each step, wincing at the tug of bruised skin under denim. Leaves crunched, and she imagined every sound to be her father's boot heel. The compound wall loomed ahead, tall and electrified, yet it never felt like protection, only the outer skin of a prison she was born into. The guard at the gate looked half bored until the beam from his flashlight brushed across her face. She knew what he saw. Dark circles beneath eyes too blue to hide emotion. A slender neck marred by thumb-shaped bruises. Lips pale with unspoken pleas. He straightened, cleared his throat, and turned the light aside. "You're out late," he muttered. The words sounded almost gentle, which only deepened the ache in her chest. "I was gathering herbs," she lied, for the cook." He nodded without meeting her eyes. "Better hurry. The Alpha's looking for you." Fear skittered down her spine, but she thanked him and slipped through. No alarm sounded. None was needed. In Ashwood Pact, her father's word alone tracked her better than any siren. The courtyard lights bathed the compound in sterile white. Modern cameras clung to every eave, their red dots blinking like watchful insects. Wolves milled about, Omegas carrying laundry, Deltas returning from patrol, a knot of warriors laughing near the training ring. Conversations faltered as she passed. One warrior, Marcus, a man she'd once bandaged after a skirmish, lifted a hand as though to greet her, then dropped it without a word. His gaze slid away. The corridor smelled of antiseptic and stale coffee. Between fluorescent pools of light, Seraphina caught her reflection in a window. Hair like spilled ink, tangled and dull. Baggy sweatshirt hiding the worst of the damage. Eyes too large, too hollow. Her mother had possessed those same eyes, bright as river water. Leon said they'd been her curse. Outside the Alpha's study, she paused to steady her breathing. Voices drifted through the heavy door, her father's sonorous baritone and a stranger's clipped reply. She didn't recognize the second voice, yet a chill of foreboding crept into her bones. She knocked softly. "Enter," Leon called. His office was a sleek marriage of mahogany and glass. One wall held a digital map of neighboring territories glowing in red and green, as though blood and envy shaped the borders. Leon sat behind a polished desk, suit impeccable, silver hair combed back from a stern brow. Across from him lounged a broad-shouldered man in a charcoal coat, backlit by the amber flames of the fireplace. The stranger's eyes, a cool, evergreen shade, tracked her the way a hunter might track a deer. Leon's nostrils flared. Took you long enough. He made no inquiry about her injuries. None were required. His gaze lingered on the sleeve of her sweatshirt, noting the faint dark spot where blood had seeped. Disgust curled his lip. "I'm sorry, Father," she said, voice small. She clasped her hands to hide the tremor in her fingers. The stranger rose with a predator's ease. "This is Seraphina?" His tone was mild, but something in it scraped across her nerves like steel on bone. "Alpha Theon Voss of Bloodthornne Pack," Leon said, gesturing between them. "And yes, this is the girl you requested." Girl, not daughter. The distinction stung more than the bruises. Theon studied her openly, head canted. He circled as if inspecting merchandise at an auction, gaze lingering on the slope of her shoulder, the curve of her waist, the thinness of her wrists. She fought the urge to shrink. "Pretty enough," he remarked, and her cheeks flamed with humiliation. "Will she obey?" Leon's laugh was a knife. "She knows the cost of disobedience." He reached across the desk, picked up a crystal tumbler, and sipped. "You'll find her pliable. She has no wolf to contest you." No wolf, she thought, because you beat it silent. Theon halted before her. He wore an expensive cologne that couldn't mask the underlying scent of iron and moss, warrior and forest and something harsher. His hand reached out, lifted a strand of her hair. "I expect loyalty," he said, voice soft yet edged with menace. "And silence unless spoken to." His thumb brushed her jaw where a bruise bloomed like dark violets. "This mark, fresh?" Leon's answer was indifferent. "It will fade before the ceremony." Ceremony. The word clanged like a bell of doom. Seraphina swallowed. "Ceremony?" Leon's eyes glinted. "Your wedding, daughter. 3 nights from now." He shifted to Theon. "You'll handle the paperwork for territory transfer." Theon's lips curved. "Our alliance will be ratified the moment she stands beside me as Luna, as agreed." He returned his gaze to Seraphina. "Look at me, little wolf." She obeyed. Strength was a foreign country, but dignity. She could try. She forced her chin up, met those dark green eyes. For a flicker of a second, she sensed something behind them. An animal hunger, raw and impatient, prowling just beneath the human facade. Theon's wolf. He smiled as though sensing her recognition. "You and I will get along," he said, "once you learn what is expected." "She won't fail you," Leon said. Seraphina's breath hitched. "Father, please." Leon slammed his palm on the desk and she jumped. "Enough. You will be wed, you will serve, and you will salvage the honor your birth cost this pack." Theon's amusement never wavered. "I'll leave you to prepare her. My men and I are lodged at the guest wing." He took her hand without permission, lifted it, pressing lips that felt colder than the forest night to her knuckles. "Until tomorrow, fiancé." He released her and strode out. The door clicked shut. Silence crawled over the room like frost. Leon stood rounding the desk. His shoes stopped inches from her bare toes. "Do you know what this alliance means?" She nodded, throat tight. "More land. More soldiers. Power," he corrected. "Real power. Theon's mines, my roots, will be untouchable." He gripped her chin, forcing her eyes to his. "And you? You will finally serve your purpose." Hot tears threatened. She bit her lip until she tasted copper. "Mother never wanted this for me." A shadow crossed his face, some distant echo of grief or rage. She couldn't tell. "Your mother wanted a strong heir. She died delivering a disappointment." His hold tightened. "You'll make amends by obeying Theon in all things. Fail, and I'll drag you back to finish what nature started." Her lungs stuttered for air. "Yes, Father." He released her so abruptly she swayed. Go. The maids will cleanse you, dress you properly. Try not to embarrass me with that limp. She turned, swallowing sobs that burned like acid. At the door she paused, dared a glance back. Leon was already pouring another drink, attention on a glowing map where Ashwood and Bloodthornne territories overlapped in red. A conqueror, admiring future spoils. In the hallway she pressed her palms to the cool wall, forcing herself to breathe. Every cell screamed to run, to hide again in the forest, to vanish into human towns, and never look back. But the pack borders were patrolled, and without a wolf she'd never outrun the hunters Leon would send. Footsteps approached, soft, hesitant. It was Mira, a kitchen omega barely older than Seraphina, carrying folded linens. Her eyes widened at the bruises, lips parted, but whatever words she meant to offer withered under invisible pressure. She dipped her head and moved on, gait quickening. Cursed, broken. Seraphina clenched her fists hard enough to drive crescent moons into her palms, grounding herself in the sting. She made her way toward the servant wing. Each turn of the corridor carried whispers that died the moment she drew near. Behind the laundry annex, a heavy door led to a tiled washroom. 2 maidservants awaited, elderly twins with matching silver braids. They bowed slightly. One gestured to a porcelain tub steaming with lavender-scented water. Your bath, miss. The woman's voice warbled, kind yet cautious. The other set a silk gown, pale as snowfall, on a chair. We were told to prepare you for supper with the Bloodthornne Alpha tomorrow. Seraphina's gaze caught on the pair of white heels placed beside the gown, shoes meant for display, not comfort. Thank you, she murmured. The twins helped her out of the sweatshirt. Gasps slipped when they saw the mottled skin beneath. One reached for a jar of salve. We can ease the swelling if you'll allow. She nodded, throat too tight for words. Warm water lapped around her, soothing the surface pain while accentuating the deeper bruises. The older twin dabbed salve along her ribs in gentle strokes, whispering apologies every time Seraphina winced. You don't deserve this, the woman said in a hush. None of it. Seraphina's tears fell soundlessly into the bath. Compassion was more painful than blows. Kindness suggested she was a person worth saving, and that felt like the cruelest hope of all. She breathed through it, focusing on the scent of lavender and cedar, on the ripple of water, on the distant hum of electric generators powering the estate. Modern, efficient, merciless. After the bath, they dried her hair, combing dark strands until they glimmered. The gown slipped over her head, silk whispering across bruised skin. It clung to her waist, flared elegantly, masking nothing of the fragile bones beneath. She saw herself in the mirror, a porcelain doll painted to deceive. What do I look like? She asked softly. The twin met her gaze in the glass. A Luna, she said, though doubt flickered in her eyes. The word sat heavy on Seraphina's tongue. Luna. She was to stand beside Theon, pretend strength while drowning in terror. The notion almost broke her, yet beneath layers of fear, a different emotion stirred. Anger, fragile but real. When the twins finished, she thanked them. One pressed a small satchel of herbs into her hand. For pain, she explained. Steep, in hot water. Seraphina tucked it into her pocket, grateful. The corridor beyond her room was empty. As she approached the door to her tiny chamber, she heard footsteps behind. She turned to see Marcus, the warrior who'd lowered his hand earlier, approach, expression stormy. I didn't know Leon would do that, he said, keeping his voice low. None of you ever know, she replied, surprised by the steel in her tone. He flinched. If you need anything. Can you stop the wedding? His jaw tightened. You know I can't. She nodded once. Then thank you, but that's all. Regret flickered across his face before he walked away. Doors shut. Lights dimmed. Inside her room, the single window overlooked the forest she had fled. She rested her forehead against the glass. Night thickened, swallowing outlines of trees. In that darkness, she imagined a younger version of herself racing barefoot, laughter chasing her steps, laughter that died the day her mother did. She pressed fingers to the pain, cool and unyielding, and whispered, "Are you there?" But the void inside answered with nothing but emptiness. Somewhere beyond the compound, wolves howled, voices rich with life, with bonds. She felt like a deaf girl at a concert, able to see the music yet doomed never to hear it. The hall clock chimed midnight. She lay on the narrow bed, unsure she dared sleep. Dreams were treacherous. They teased freedom she didn't possess. She traced the outline of her mother's locket beneath her collarbone, her only inheritance. Inside, a tiny picture worn nearly to ghostliness, a woman smiling at a future that never came. Seraphina closed her eyes, mouth forming words she'd spoken since childhood. "Mother, guide me." The silence that followed was hollow, but not absolute. Inside the quiet, she sensed the faintest spark. No sound, no voice, only the barest flutter like wings brushing against glass. It vanished before she could grasp it, leaving questions echoing in the dark. A door slammed somewhere and she jolted upright, breath caught. Night pressed on. Pain ebbed and swelled. Yet the spark, imagined or not, lingered just beyond consciousness, promising that the void might one day answer. She curled beneath the blanket, heartbeat loud in her ears. Tomorrow would bring fittings and rehearsals, vows she hadn't chosen, teeth sinking into skin to mark her as property. She clutched the locket tighter. Someday I'll escape. The vow formed silently, fierce as a brand, glowing in her thoughts as sleep finally tugged her under. And deep within the hollow where her wolf should have lived, something shifted, a feather on still water. Waiting. Morning broke reluctantly, a dull pearlescent glow leaking through the thin curtains of Seraphina's room. The brief hours of sleep had brought no rest, only disjointed flashes of her father's snarling face and Theon's chilling smile. She sat up slowly, feeling every bruise as though it had been forged overnight into fresh iron bands around her ribs. A knock sounded, 3 quick taps, polite but insistent. Before she could answer, the door opened, and Mira slipped inside with a tray. Steam spiraled from a mug of coffee strong enough to stain the air with roasted bitterness. "Breakfast," Mira whispered, closing the door behind her. "I thought you might need it before the fitting." Seraphina managed a grateful smile. "You're kind to risk bringing it. They won't care unless you spill it on the dress." Mira set the tray on the nightstand. "Word is the Alpha wants you perfect." Her gaze drifted to the shadowed hollows beneath Seraphina's eyes. "I'm not sure he knows what that means." Seraphina wrapped her fingers around the mug, savoring its warmth. "Do you ever wish we could just leave?" "Every day." Mira's smile was small and sad. "But the world outside is full of packs just like this one." She tucked a stray hair behind her ear. "Eat while you can. The seamstress is waiting." Breakfast tasted of cardboard and anxiety, but she forced down every bite. When she stepped into the hallway, 2 guards flanked her with stoic expressions, escorting her to the tailoring suite. The hallway bustled with activity. Warriors polishing rifles on tabletops, Omegas scrubbing floors to a sterile shine, the distant hum of drones patrolling the perimeter. Inside the suite, bolts of ivory satin and gauze spilled across work tables. Ornette, the pack's seamstress, thin spectacles perched on her nose, measured Seraphina's waist with brisk efficiency while muttering calculations. "Stand straight," Ornette admonished as pins clicked between her teeth. "The neckline sits better if your shoulders are square." "They're sore," Seraphina admitted. She winced when the tape pressed into a bruise. Ornette's eyes softened, then hardened again. "Bruises don't photograph. You'll wear concealer." She jotted figures on a tablet. "Your veil arrives by noon. With luck, the fit will need minimal adjustments." A door at the far end opened and Theon strode in. His presence crowded the room, pure gravity. Guards straightened. Ornette bowed her head. "Leave us," Theon said. Every seamstress and assistant filed out without protest, Ornette last to go, though her glance toward Seraphina held a trace of pity. Alone with him, Seraphina felt the walls shrink. Theon surveyed her in half-finished silk, a slow perusal that left her skin prickling. "Turn," he commanded. She pivoted once, the hem brushing her ankles. "Lift your chin." She obeyed, keeping her eyes forward. His thumb brushed her collarbone, almost tender until he pressed on a fresh bruise. She sucked in a breath. He smiled. "Pretty," he said. "Bruises remind you to behave." "Is that why you came, to add more?" The question escaped before she could swallow it back. His gaze sharpened, equal parts amusement and warning. "I came to ensure perfection. A Luna must embody her alpha's power." He grasped her wrist, turning it upward. Purple marks ringed the delicate flesh. "These will fade beneath silk gloves, but I want you to remember how fragile you are." "I remember," she murmured. His eyes flickered, an emerald gleam that wasn't entirely human. In the depths, she glimpsed his wolf, prowling behind the glass of civility. Dominant, cruel, hungry. Some feral part of her recoiled, but the void where her own wolf should have flared remained eerily still. Theon released her. "My pack physician will examine you after the ceremony. I prefer my possessions functional." "Possessions," she echoed. "Yes, and if you want better treatment, prove your usefulness." He stepped closer until the tailored shoulders of his coat brushed the silk at her chest. "Submit willingly when I claim you, and I might show mercy." A chill rippled over her scalp. "Claiming me won't give you the mate bond," she whispered. "That requires consent of the heart." His smile turned blade-thin. "Hearts are malleable things." He traced one finger down her cheek. "I'll shape yours in time." Footsteps sounded outside, and Ornette re-entered with a forced smile. "Apologies, Alpha. Final fittings await." Theon straightened. "Carry on." He pivoted, coat swishing, and paused at the threshold. Without turning, he said, "Remember, silk gloves, not leather. Leather looks brutal, and tonight we require elegance." Then he was gone. Ornette exhaled shakily. "Hold still, dear." Her hands trembled as she adjusted the bodice. "Almost done." 2 hours later, Seraphina stood in front of the mirror wearing the finished gown, satin molded to her figure, illusion lace tracing her shoulders, delicate pearls sewn along the waistline. The veil, white tulle dusted with crystals, waited on a hanger. She looked like a bride from a glossy fashion spread, yet her eyes betrayed the farce. Ornette clasped her hands. "You're beautiful." "I feel like I'm inside someone else's life," Seraphina replied. "Someone braver." "Bravery is surviving when you have no choice." Ornette's voice wavered. "May the moon goddess watch over you." She led Seraphina to a chair. "Rest. You'll need energy for tonight." Seraphina closed her eyes, trying again to sense the wolf she'd never met. Nothing. Only a vast, silent plain stretching inside her mind. Loneliness swallowed her whole. The afternoon blurred with rehearsals, photographs for the Alliance announcement, and endless posture corrections. By dusk, lanterns illuminated the courtyard with a soft, golden glow. Guests arrived, pack elders in tailored suits, visiting alphas flanked by warriors, sleek cars purring up the drive. The air thrummed with the scalpel hush of political tension. From behind the sheer curtain of the bridal suite, Seraphina watched black SUVs roll in, headlights slicing the twilight. She recognized Marcus among the honor guard, standing rigid by the gate. When their eyes met, he offered the smallest of nods, an apology or a farewell, she wasn't sure. Music drifted from the ballroom, a string quartet playing something mournful. Mira slipped inside carrying a small box. "Lip color," she explained, opening it to reveal a rose gold tube. She hesitated, then met Seraphina's gaze. We have 5 minutes. Seraphina searched the girl's face. Is there something you want to say? Mira's throat bobbed. If you find a chance to run, take it. Bloodthornne borders humans. You might hide among them. That would bring war on you. War is coming anyway, Mira murmured, applying the lipstick with a trembling hand. At least then it's for a cause. She stepped back. All done. Her eyes glistened. You deserve gentleness. Gentleness, Seraphina thought, was a language no one here spoke, yet Mira's whisper warmed a corner of her frozen heart. The heavy doors opened. 2 guards entered, their black uniforms crisp, electric batons at their belts. One motioned. It's time. Veil lowered, gloves smoothed. She followed them down corridors lit by chandeliers. Each step felt suspended between worlds, the life she knew ending with every click of her heels, the unknown yawning ahead. At the ballroom entrance, Alpha Leon awaited in a dark suit, silver cufflinks shaped like wolves' heads. He did not offer his arm. Instead, he inspected her attire with critical eyes and nodded once. You will stand at my right until vows are exchanged, he said. Then you belong to Theon. I never belonged to you, she whispered, surprising herself. His eyes narrowed. Defiance is a dangerous game. He pushed open the door and sound swelled. Applause, though muted, as though the crowd clapped with gloves on. Crystal chandeliers rained light over marble floors. Tables draped in white linen curved around a central aisle. At the far end, beneath an arch of moon-white roses, Theon stood waiting, hands clasped behind his back. Every inch of him radiated ownership. The crowd parted as Leon led her forward. Snatches of conversation floated. Thought she was ill. Leon's leverage. Bloodthornne annex. Clever move. She kept her gaze on a point beyond Theon's shoulder where a tall window framed a slice of night sky. Somewhere outside those walls, real wolves ran free under the moon. They reached the arch. Leon released her hand without looking at her. The officiant, a pack elder wearing a ceremonial sash, cleared his throat and began reciting the vows written hours ago by Leon's secretary. Theon took her gloved hands in his bare ones, and the officiant intoned, Do you accept Alpha Theon Voss as your mate and husband in the sight of the moon goddess and these witnesses? Her heartbeat thundered. This was the moment she could refuse, but refusal would invite immediate, brutal consequences for everyone who had ever shown her kindness. Mira, Ornette, Marcus. Theon squeezed her fingers until bones creaked. His voice whispered under the elders, Choose wisely. She swallowed broken glass and whispered, I do. A satisfied hush rippled through the crowd. Theon repeated his vows, promising to protect and lead, a mockery she tasted like ash. The officiant pronounced them bonded by ceremony but not by fate. Theon's hand slipped to the back of her neck. She braced herself. He lowered his head and bit, teeth puncturing skin just above the lace collar. Pain flared hot, sharp, possessive. Gasps rose among guests. Theon held the bite, drawing the faintest blood before releasing. His tongue flicked across the wound, sealing a temporary claim. Her knees buckled. He steadied her, fingers gentle only because the room watched. Applause swelled, louder now, triumphant. Alpha Leon's thin smile gleamed like a dagger, catching candlelight. Someone announced the first dance. Music resumed, slow and opulent. Theon pulled her against him, gliding across marble. Smile, he murmured at her ear. Our photographers need proof of bliss. She forced her lips to curve, though tears brimmed at the edges of her vision. Each step made the bite throb in time with the bass line, a brand pulsing with her heartbeat. Around them, guests chatted about trade routes, mining rights, the upcoming summit with the Lycan throne. No one mentioned her name. She was an accessory, a necessary hinge in the machinery of power. After 3 songs, Leon approached with a raised glass. To the future of our packs, he toasted. Crystal clinked. Frosted smiles answered. Theon guided her off the dance floor and toward a side corridor. "The rest of the celebration is for politics," he said. "You've served your part." They exited into the relative quiet of the foyer. Guards formed a discreet escort. In the courtyard, a sleek black limousine idled. Theon opened the door himself, gesturing for her to enter. As she slid onto the leather seat, a single camera flash from inside the ballroom caught her profile. Bride in white, eyes shining under chandeliers. Proof, advertisement, warning. The door shut. Sound fell away. Theon joined her, the partition sealing them from the driver. The car rolled forward. "Remove the gloves," he said. Her fingers trembled as she obeyed. He took her hands, studying the raw crescents left by her own nails. "You bleed easily," he observed, almost clinically. His wolf surfaced again. She felt it more than saw it, a pressure in the air like ozone before lightning. It exuded possessiveness, a growl humming beneath his skin. Her own mind remained silent, painfully empty. "You will heal," he said. "My physician has the latest tech, stims that accelerate tissue regeneration." "Why bother if bruises remind me to behave?" she asked, voice barely above the engine's purr. "Because decorations must remain unmarred in public," he replied. "But make no mistake, scars in hidden places are useful." He lifted her left hand, kissed the knuckles with a softness that belied the cruelty behind it. "Hidden reminders keep loyalty fresh." Streetlights streaked across his face, alternating bands of light and shadow. For a moment, she imagined slamming the door at the next stop, running until lungs burst. But wolves ran security at every gate. Drones tracked heat signatures. Theon would hunt her down before she breached the border. "You're quiet," he noted. "Cat got your tongue?" "My wolf is silent," she said. "There's nothing left to say." He laughed, low and amused. "Wolves don't stay silent forever. I'll coax her out eventually. She's dormant. All the better. I'll awaken her on my terms." He leaned back. "Sleep if you can. Bloodthornne is 3 hours away." "Sleep? In the same car with him?" She folded her hands in her lap and fixed her gaze on the passing night, where forests blurred into darkness. Time crawled. The scent of leather mingled with his cologne and the faint metallic tang of her own blood. At last the limousine slowed, gates yawning open to reveal a sprawling compound of steel and glass. Floodlights swept across manicured lawns, laser sensors tracing invisible grids. The sleek fortress rose like a monolith against the sky, windows glinting with silent promise of power. Guards saluted as the car rolled up a circular drive. Theon exited first, then offered a hand. Cameras atop the entrance tracked her movements. She took his hand because she had no choice. Theon led her through glass doors into a lobby bathed in cool whites and muted gold. Modern art lined the walls, abstract swirls that reminded her of storms. Elevator doors opened soundlessly. Inside, chrome panels reflected their image, a tall, impeccably dressed alpha and the bride he had purchased. Penthouse suite, 17th floor. The elevator opened into a hallway lined with matte black doors. Theon guided her to the last one, unlocked it with a retinal scan, and stepped aside. Her new room was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a glittering city skyline, a king-size bed draped in silver linens, a private bath of marble and frosted glass. It was everything luxury promised and nothing safety required. "There's a wardrobe stocked in your size," Theon said, nodding toward mirrored closets. "You'll have a liaison for etiquette lessons beginning tomorrow. Fail to progress, and I'll adjust your motivation." She turned to him. "What if I leave?" His smile held no warmth. "The bracelets on your wrists contain tracers. Step beyond the fence and you'll trigger an alert." She looked down, startled. Delicate gold bangles circled each wrist, near invisible against the silk sleeves. She hadn't noticed when he clasped them on the ride. Her pulse hammered beneath the metal. "You planned this," she murmured. "I plan everything," he said. "It's why I win." He brushed a strand of hair from her cheek, fingers lingering, a breath too long. "Rest," Tomorrow is the first day of your new purpose." He turned and left, the door's soft click echoing finality. Silence thudded in her ears. She backed away until her calves hit the edge of the bed and sank onto the mattress. Moonlight poured through the windows, silvering the floor. She slipped off the heels, stood barefoot on cold marble, and crossed to the glass wall. The city below shimmered with neon veins, alive and oblivious. "Are you there?" she whispered to the quiet inside her head. No answer. Only the hush of conditioned air vents and the faint rumble of traffic far below. She pressed her palm to the cool glass. Somewhere beyond that city, Mira washed dishes in a kitchen that smelled of soap and sorrow. Ornette stitched gowns for other girls. Marcus patrolled borders he no longer believed in. And she was caged in velvet. Her neck ached where Theon had bitten. She touched the wound, felt the raised edges. Blood had crusted on the lace. She unfastened the gown, letting it puddle like spilled moonlight on the floor, and padded into the bathroom. The mirror revealed skin marred by bruises, red bite punctures, tape marks from the tailor's measuring. She turned on the shower and watched steam cloud the room. Under the hot water, she scrubbed until her skin stung fresh, but nothing washed away the sense of ownership branded into her flesh. She sank to her knees, forehead against tile, letting water beat down like rain. Tears mingled with the spray, indistinguishable. Minutes or hours later, she shut off the water, dried, and slipped into a simple cotton nightdress she found in a drawer. She curled on the bed, legs pulled to her chest. Outside, the city lights flickered. She whispered her mother's name, then new words shaped from battered hope. "Someday, I'll escape." Inside the void, the featherlight flutter stirred again, soft, uncertain, yet unmistakably real. A presence, faint but alive. She closed her eyes around it like cupping a fragile ember, willing it to last long enough to grow. Seraphina woke to a knock so sharp it seemed to pierce the veil of her restless dreams. She sat up, momentarily disoriented by the opulence around her. Towering windows, silver curtains, a gleaming tablet on the bedside table displaying the time, 6:30 a.m. Her body protested every movement, muscles stiff from yesterday's punishments and the long drive. She answered with a hesitant, "Yes?" A woman entered, tall and impeccably dressed in a graphite gray skirt suit. She was perhaps mid-30s, with coiled black hair pinned at the nape of her neck and eyes the color of polished obsidian. An earpiece nestled in her right ear. "Good morning, Lady Voss," she said, voice warm but professional. "I'm Cassandra, your liaison. I'll be assisting with your schedule, attire, and etiquette lessons. May I come in?" "You already have," Seraphina replied, tugging the nightdress higher on her bruised shoulders. "Please, call me Seraphina." A small curve ghosted across Cassandra's mouth. "Seraphina, then. I've brought your first day agenda." She held out a thin data pad. "After breakfast, you have a medical evaluation with Dr. Valen. Then a tour of the Luna quarters, followed by luncheon with Alpha Theon's Beta. Later, basic protocol coaching and self-defense orientation." "Self-defense?" Seraphina echoed. "Alpha's directive." Cassandra's gaze flicked to Seraphina's bandaged neck. "He believes a Luna should be prepared." Prepared to survive him, Seraphina thought but didn't say. She set the data pad on the mattress, noticing a faint tremor in her hands. Cassandra noticed too, her brow furrowed. "There's coffee in the sitting room," Cassandra said softly, "and pain relief patches if you need them." "I'm fine," Seraphina lied. Cassandra nodded once, then moved to the wardrobe. She selected a soft blue blouse, fitted leather trousers, and sleek ankle boots with a low heel. "Choose these for the doctor's visit. Comfort matters." Her fingers lingered on the cloth. "I'll wait outside while you dress." When the door closed, Seraphina slid from bed. Her legs wobbled. She padded to the bathroom mirror. Bruises bloomed from collarbone to hip, dusk blue and rust red. The bite mark throbbed in angry relief. She peeled away yesterday's makeshift gauze, grimacing as dried blood tugged skin. She showered quickly, letting warm water wake her senses, then pulled on the clothes Cassandra had set aside. They fit perfectly, hugging her slight curves without restricting movement. She smoothed the blouse and took a steadying breath before opening the door. Cassandra stood by a sleek glass table where a pot of coffee and a plate of croissants waited. Sunlight spilled through the windows, gilding everything in pale gold. "Eat," Cassandra urged, pouring a cup. "Dr. Valen is thorough. Better not face him on an empty stomach." Seraphina took a croissant, nibbling while scanning the skyline. Tower cranes, distant skyscrapers, a silver river winding like a mirrored ribbon. The city felt unreal, a photograph she'd stepped inside. "Does Theon ever go into the city?" she asked. "Only for official meetings." Cassandra handed her the coffee. "Most pack affairs run from here. Alpha prefers control." Control. The word sat heavy between them. Seraphina drank, appreciating the bittersweet heat. It steadied her nerves, though her stomach fluttered with anxiety. Cassandra checked her wristwatch. Time. She guided Seraphina into the hallway where 2 guards joined them. Same black uniforms, same impassive eyes. Elevator ride down, atrium rush of air-conditioned chill, then through a glass corridor linking to a smaller wing. Sunlit banners displayed the Bloodthornne emblem, a thorn-wreathed wolf head rendered in crimson and silver. Security sensors hummed overhead. Distantly, a drone skimmed the perimeter wall. Outside Dr. Valen's office, the smell of antiseptic and citrus cleanser mingled. Cassandra stayed by the door while Seraphina stepped inside. The medical suite glowed sterile white. Dr. Valen, a lean man with silver-streaked hair and rimless glasses, greeted her with a brisk nod. "Seraphina, I'm here to ensure you're in optimal health." He gestured to an exam chair. "Please sit." She complied. Valen's voice was low, but the monitors near the wall recorded every word. He scanned her wrists, noting the tracer bracelets. "Any nausea, dizziness, shortness of breath?" he asked. "I'm bruised," she said. "Otherwise, fine." He lifted her chin gently, studying the bite mark. Alpha wasn't subtle. He pressed a device to the wound. It beeped. "Minor tissue trauma. No infection risk yet." She winced as he examined her ribs. "Deep contusions," he muttered. "Cracked? Possibly. We'll run a portable CT." He snapped his fingers. A hovering microscanner hummed over her torso, displaying layered images on the wall screen. While data populated, Valen unwrapped a packet of thin adhesive patches. "Nano-infusion analgesics. They'll dull the worst of it." "You patch the bruises, but they'll return," she murmured. He paused. "That depends on the cause. If you require help, ask me." She looked up. His eyes held no cruelty, only practiced detachment tempered by a shade of pity. It unnerved her. Afraid the cameras watched, she said nothing. Valen applied a patch just below her collarbone. Cool numbness spread. He pressed another to her flank, then studied the scan. 1 fracture, 7th rib, not displaced. He loaded a syringe with a clear, faintly luminous serum. "Bone knit stimulant. This will accelerate the healing." The needle slid between ribs, heat blossomed, then faded into surprising relief. She inhaled sharply, realizing how shallow her breaths had been. "Better," she whispered. Valen disposed of the vial. "Rest will finish the job." As she buttoned her blouse, he lowered his voice. "Pain is useful in politics, Lady Voss, but it hinders Aluna's duties. If you need attention, I answer to medical ethics first, Alpha second. A truth he understands." He tapped his temple. "Little is private in this fortress, yet some data stays off record." She studied him, uncertain whether trust was safe. Still, the promise of a single ally eased something inside her. Cassandra re-entered as Valen printed a slim data slate of her results. She escorted Seraphina toward the atrium again. Guards followed at a respectful distance. "You handled that well," Cassandra said. I sat still, Seraphina replied. That's hardly skill. Sitting still can be strategy. Cassandra offered a faint grin. Come. The beta is expecting you on the garden terrace. They crossed an indoor bridge spanning an atrium filled with living walls of greenery. Ferns, orchids, vines flowing down glass panels. Sunlight refracted, painting shifting mosaics across the walkway. Seraphina slowed, mesmerized. You like plants? Cassandra observed. They're alive without needing permission. The words slipped out before Seraphina could temper them. Cassandra's brows knit, but she said nothing. At the terrace, a tall man stood beside a table set for two, charcoal suit, silver clip in his dark hair. He turned with courteous precision. Lady Voss, he greeted, extending a hand. I'm Alaric, Alpha Theon's Beta. Welcome to Bloodthornne. She shook his hand. His grip was firm but not crushing. He gestured to a chair. I hope the drive wasn't too tiring, he said as they sat. Theon values efficiency, but forgets comfort. She folded her hands in her lap. It was long, but I managed. Servants poured sparkling water, placed plates of grilled vegetables, smoked salmon, and quinoa salad. The freshness surprised her after Ashwood's plain fare. Alaric thanked the servants, then turned back to her. Your arrival cements a vital alliance. Pax will think twice before challenging Bloodthornne and Ashwood united. And what do you think? She asked quietly. He considered. I think alliances built on pain are brittle, but I serve my alpha. He drank water, eyes wandering to the horizon. Tell me, do you have interests, music, literature? We arrange cultural events so our Luna feels at home. Her throat tightened. No one had asked about her interests in years. I read when I can. Mostly history, herbal compendiums, music, piano pieces my mother loved. Alaric's gaze softened. There's a music room on the east wing with an ebony grand. If you wish to play, notify me. Gratitude warmed her chest. Thank you. A shadow fell over the table. Theon stood behind her, hands clasped behind his back. Alaric shot to his feet. Seraphina followed, pulse leaping. Theon surveyed the scene. Comfortable, I hope. His eyes lingered on the bandage beneath her collar. Dr. Valen patched you? Yes, she replied. Good, he addressed Alaric. We moved the Luna ceremony to 5 days. Schedule the fittings. His gaze returned to Seraphina. I've arranged a surprise. A brief session in the training arena this afternoon. A beat of dread. Training? Hand-to-hand basics. He smiled. A strong Luna must defend herself. Alaric glanced at Seraphina, then back to Theon. The fracture. The stimulus will close it by evening. Theon interrupted. She'll manage. He leaned down, brushing a possessive kiss on Seraphina's temple. Be ready by 3. He strode off, guards trailing. Alaric exhaled slowly, resuming his seat. He means well in his own fashion, he murmured. Does he? Seraphina asked, voice steadier than she felt. Alaric's jaw flexed. He redirected the conversation to safe territory, packed traditions, upcoming festivals. But she sensed his mind remained on Theon's command. When lunch ended, Cassandra led her to a second-floor corridor painted in calming sage hues. She pointed out the library, music room, and a small greenhouse bursting with orchids. The Alpha encourages hobbies, Cassandra said. Seraphina stepped inside the greenhouse. The air smelled of damp earth and floral sweetness. She trailed fingers over velvety petals, longing to disappear among them. Cassandra waited outside, giving her a moment of privacy astonishing in this fortress of eyes. A faint buzzing drew her gaze to a ventilation vent. She wondered if a camera watched even here. She whispered anyway. Someday, I'll escape. The orchids kept her secret. Violet throats open in silent applause. At 3 sharp, Cassandra accompanied her to the training arena. an underground facility with padded floors, mirrored walls, and racks of practice weapons. Theon stood near a sparring ring wearing a charcoal t-shirt and tactical pants, his sleeves revealing muscular arms inked with subtle rune lines. Two instructors waited, a wiry woman with cropped auburn hair and a scar across her brow, and a broad-shouldered man carrying a stack of padded mitts. Theon beckoned. "Step onto the mat." Seraphina's heartbeat stuttered. Her ribs still ached, but the stimulant dulled most pain. She kicked off her boots and obeyed, feet sinking into the firm padding. "This is Captain Brenna," Theon said, indicating the auburn-haired woman. "She'll teach you basic blocks and strikes." He folded his arms. "I'll observe." Brenna offered a curt nod. "We start slow. Lift your hands." Seraphina raised her fists, elbows tucked. Brenna corrected the angle. "Drive from your hips when you punch," Brenna instructed. "Keep your core tight." Seraphina jabbed the mitt. Pain flickered. Manageable. She jabbed again. Brenna smiled faintly. "Good. Now block." Brenna's padded hand swept toward Seraphina's side. She flinched backward. Brenna lowered the mitt. "Predictable defense invites a second strike. Try again." Seraphina breathed, lifted arms. Brenna attacked slower. Seraphina deflected the blow, surprised at her own reflex. "Better," Brenna said. They drilled simple movements, jab, cross, block, knee, until sweat dampened Seraphina's blouse. Her lungs burned, but adrenaline pushed her on. At last Brenna signaled a break. Seraphina swayed, catching her breath. Theon stepped forward, tossing Brenna a towel. "Leave us," he said. Brenna bowed and exited with her assistant. Theon circled Seraphina. "You have potential," he said. "Your eyes focus when you strike." He brushed a knuckle along her cheek. "Fight for me, and you'll earn privileges." "I thought I was already your possession," she replied, voice hoarse from exertion. "Possessions can rise in value." He stepped behind her, hands on her shoulders. "Imagine what we could achieve with you, confident, deadly." He spun her gently to face the mirror. "Look." Her reflection startled her. Hair damp, cheeks flushed, eyes bright. Bruises peeked beneath fabric, yet she looked alive. Theon's hand rested at her waist, claiming credit. "Tell me what you see," he said. "I see someone trying to survive," she answered honestly. His mouth curved. "Survival is admirable, loyalty is better." He pressed a kiss to her shoulder through the fabric. "Shower, then dinner with me privately. Wear something striking." When he left, Cassandra appeared, leading Seraphina to the locker room. Steam from communal showers rose in hazy ribbons. Cassandra handed her a bottle of electrolyte drink. "You managed well," Cassandra said softly. "Because I know pain. I just learned to move with it." Cassandra's eyes shone with quiet respect. "Not everyone can." Under the shower spray, Seraphina felt muscles loosen despite fresh aches. She dressed in simple leggings and a loose top, then followed Cassandra to her suite. On the bed lay several gowns, emerald satin, crimson velvet, black silk. She lifted the black silk. It felt like night embodied. Cassandra raised an approving brow. "That one." Seraphina dressed, Cassandra fastening a delicate chain at her nape. In the mirror, the gown hugged her figure, low back revealing pale skin and healing bruises. Her eyes met Cassandra's reflection. "Does beauty excuse captivity?" Seraphina asked. Cassandra's expression softened with something bordering sorrow. "Beauty is a weapon. Choose how you wield it." Dinner took place in a private dining room lit by candlelight and a single crystal chandelier. Theon stood as she entered, sweeping his gaze over the gown. "Exquisite," he pronounced. He pulled out a chair. "Sit." She sat. Silver domes covered the plates. Theon lifted hers, revealing seared sea bass with lemon butter and roasted asparagus. Aromas teased her appetite. "I had the chef review your dietary needs," he said. "Protein aids healing." Helpless to rebel against hunger, she tasted the fish. It melted on her tongue. Theon watched her eat before touching his own food. Dr. Valen's report indicates a fracture, he said. You'll avoid sparring until cleared. She nodded. Thank you. His brows ticked upward. Politeness costs nothing, yet means much. Courtesy is easier than war, she murmured. A smile ghosted across his lips. Is that how you navigate your father? I endure him. She set her fork down. Endurance isn't skillful, but it's consistent. Consistency earns trust. He sipped red wine, then leaned back. Tell me your ambitions. Ambitions? The question hollowed her. Survival, she said finally. Perhaps peace. Peace is fragile without strength. He poured wine into her glass. I'll give you strength. You give me loyalty. His eyes shimmered green in candlelight, wolf near the surface. A fair trade. She lifted the glass but didn't drink. Strength at what price? Everything has a price. Decide what you're willing to pay. He cleared his plate and stood. Rest well. Lessons resume at dawn. He left her with the flicker of candle flames and the echo of his footsteps fading down the corridor. Wine bled shadows across white linen. She pushed the glass away. Back in her suite, she unfastened the gown, muscles sore. Moonlight traced silver paths over the floor. She approached the window and pressed her palm against the glass once more. I'm still here, she whispered to the silence inside. A breath. A heartbeat. And then the faintest answering whisper across her consciousness. Not words, merely the softest brush of warmth. She closed her eyes, opening herself to it like a flower to light. I hear you, she thought, I'll wait. She curled under the duvet, cradling that fragile ember. Outside, city lights glittered in a vast hush. Inside, for the first time in years, she felt something other than fear, a thread of connection, delicate as cobweb silk, stretching between her and the sleeping wolf within. And though escape was still a dream, she let that dream cradle her until dawn's first pale rays nudged the night aside. Seraphina woke before sunrise, roused by a nightmare in which the forest trees turned into iron bars that closed around her throat. She lay still in the half-dark, lungs aching, and counted her heartbeats until the panic ebbed. Outside the window, the eastern sky wore a pale pink edge. Within minutes, it would brighten to full daylight. The bedside clock glowed 5:04. Determined not to greet the day in bed like a prisoner, she slipped out from under the duvet and padded to the window. The city still slumbered. Only a few cars crawled along the bridges, their headlights small as fireflies. She pressed her injured ribs, testing. The bone-knit serum had done its work. A dull ache lingered, but the sharpness had faded. A fragile victory, but her own. A quiet chime sounded from the tablet on her nightstand. A schedule update flashed across the screen. 6 o'clock, light breakfast. 6:30, private call with Alpha Leon. 7 o'clock, etiquette session, formal dining. 9 o'clock, tour of Luna Charity Wing. 12 o'clock, lunch with Cassandra, informal. 13:30, meditation and stamina drills. 16 o'clock, fitting for Luna ceremony gown. A pulse of dread stirred at the second item. A call from her father, no doubt to confirm that the product he'd bartered away still functioned. She inhaled, steadying herself, and headed to the bath to wash the sweat of nightmares from her skin. By the time she emerged wrapped in a robe, a discreet knock sounded. Cassandra entered wheeling a small cart bearing yogurt, berries, and oatmeal laced with cinnamon. Steam rose from a pot of lavender tea. Morning, Cassandra said softly. I thought tea might soothe your throat. You didn't drink at dinner. Thank you. Seraphina poured a cup. I have a call with Alpha Leon. Cassandra's eyes flicked toward the tablet. Theon requested it. He wants your father to see you thriving. Thriving. The word tasted like ash. Yet she'd need every scrap of composure, so she ate the oatmeal, spoonful by spoonful, even as nausea curled faintly in her stomach. At 6:25, Cassandra guided her to a small conference nook adjoining the suite. Glass walls, table of pale stone, camera embedded discreetly above the screen. Guards stationed themselves just outside. Cassandra touched a control panel and Leon's face appeared on the wall-mounted monitor. He looked impeccably groomed in a navy suit, silver hair smoothed back. Only a slight crease between his brows hinted at impatience. "Seraphina," he greeted, tone cool. "I've received reports of your arrival." She clasped her hands in her lap to steady them. "I arrived safely." "And the Alpha?" Leon's gaze cut keen as a scalpel. "Satisfied?" "He seems pleased with the alliance arrangements." Leon's attention shifted, likely to a data feed off-screen. "You look healthier than I expected. No visible bruising. Good. I need you presentable when Bloodthornne's photographers release the first official portraits." Anger fluttered in her chest, small, nervous wings. "I'm sure your reputation will shine." His eyes snapped back to her. "Mind the sarcasm. Remember why you live in that tower instead of beneath the ground alongside your mother." The blow landed even across 1,000 kilometers of fiber optic cable. Seraphina swallowed. "I remember everything." Leon leaned back, steepling his fingers. "Your next duty is to secure Theon's absolute loyalty. Bonds of power fray. The mate bond is indestructible. Persuade him to seal it." Her pulse stumbled. "That bond can't be forced." "You'll find a way." He gave a reptilian smile. "Or Bloodthornne will discover just how eager Ashwood can be to renegotiate boundaries, should the alliance sour." She stared, hatred churning. The silence lengthened until Leon's eyes narrowed. "You would challenge me?" "No," she said, voice soft but firm. "I will do what is required." Inwardly, she finished the sentence. "Until I can end this cycle." Leon seemed satisfied. "Good. Make yourself indispensable to Theon. Then we all prosper." The feed cut without farewell. Seraphina exhaled shakily. Cassandra crossed to her, laying a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Breathe." "I am." Seraphina drew another breath deeper. "He's planning something. He wants me to push Theon into a mate bond. But Theon only values leverage." "Leverage changes," Cassandra murmured. "If you ever need an ear." "I listen." Cassandra escorted her back to the suite so she could dress for etiquette tutoring. The chosen outfit, cream blouse with pin-tucked sleeves, tailored trousers, looked sophisticated yet allowed free movement. A delicate pendant nestled against the bite mark, hiding it from casual view. The etiquette coach was a trim older woman named Mrs. Hale, who conducted the session in a replica dining room complete with crystal, multiple forks, and dauntingly tall chairs. She corrected Seraphina's posture, her angle of sip, even the precise speed at which she dabbed her lips with the napkin. At first it felt absurd. Surely no one would notice such minor missteps. But then, Seraphina remembered the whispers at the alliance wedding. Wolves scented weakness in the smallest tremor. Mid-session, a figure appeared at the doorway, Theon, hands clasped behind his back. Mrs. Hale dipped her head and stepped aside. "How fares my bride?" Theon asked, surveying the table. Seraphina set down her fork. "Learning more forks than one woman should ever need." A low chuckle. "Humor suits you." He walked behind her chair, resting a hand lightly on her shoulder. "We host the Lycan court's envoy tomorrow. Do well, and I will reward you." Her breath caught. "What kind of reward?" "Freedom to visit the city gardens. Under escort, of course." His thumb stroked the pendant chain. "Imagine fresh air, green spaces, perhaps even a cafe cappuccino." The offer dangled like a golden coin. Gardens meant public spaces, potential witnesses, maybe even allies. Slowly she nodded. "I'll do my best." "I expect nothing less." He turned toward the door. Carry on, Mrs. Hale. When he'd gone, Mrs. Hale lifted a brow. You have influence already. Remember, Luna, that power wielded carefully often outlasts brute force. Seraphina repeated the salutation gestures, the exact order of toasts, until every movement felt automatic. Still, an undertow of tension tugged her. A single mistake tomorrow could cost that sliver of freedom. After the lesson, Cassandra whisked her away for the charity wing tour, a gleaming 3-story annex attached to the main fortress. Glass walls framed rehabilitation rooms, labs dispensing antiviral serums, even a children's reading nook where volunteers sorted holographic storybooks. Alaric met them at the entrance, clipboard in hand. We intend you to sponsor these programs, he explained. Your signature can unlock funding from allied packs. Seraphina paused by a room where a young wolf, leg-bound in a cast, practiced walking with a robotic exoskeleton. The boy's face was pinched with effort but bright with determination. Compassion rose sharp as a blade. I'll sign anything that helps, she said softly. Alaric offered a grateful nod. Most Lunas choose pet causes for publicity. You might become the first to champion real change. A flicker of warmth spread through her chest. Maybe here, behind the steel and cameras, she could carve something that mattered. Lunch passed in a haze of tomato soup and rye bread shared with Cassandra on a balcony overlooking an artificial lake. Cassandra spoke of her own upbringing in a neutral border pack, parents who traded timber, a scholarship to an academy where she'd trained for pack diplomacy. Seraphina found herself sharing memories of her mother's garden behind the Alpha residence, rows of herbs, climbing roses, morning dew catching sunlight like diamonds. Cassandra listened with quiet kindness that felt as restorative as Valen's medical patches. At 1:30, meditation and stamina drills beckoned, less punishing than sparring, but taxing nonetheless. Captain Brenna guided her through breathing exercises in a mirrored studio scented with eucalyptus. They progressed to balance work on wobble discs, light footwork, stretches targeting hip flexors. Brenna's manner mixed strictness with grudging respect. You focus fast, Brenna commented after Seraphina held a plank for 90 seconds. Most novices shake by 40. Pain teaches control, Seraphina answered, sweat dripping from her brow. Brenna nodded as if that explained everything. Finally, as afternoon sun slanted low, Cassandra escorted her to the atelier for the Luna ceremony fitting. Ornette had traveled from Ashwood with her assistants, now joined by Bloodthornne tailors. Bolts of silvery fabric shimmered across work tables like moonlit water. Seraphina stepped onto the pedestal while 3 seamstresses draped fabric against her skin. Ornette approached with a bodice covered in hand-stitched seed pearls that vibrated with iridescence. This will catch every light, Ornette murmured, pinning seams. Turn. Pins clicked. Chalk traced faint lines along the waist. At her back, Ornette whispered, Breathe deep. Seraphina inhaled, and for an instant she smelled Ashwood pines, the scent of home from before it became a cage. Her mother used to hum lullabies while sewing festival dresses. The memory flooded her with sudden grief. She blinked hard, refusing tears. Theon appeared unannounced, posture relaxed but eyes sharp. Is it ready? Final stitching tomorrow morning, Ornette said. She'll shine. He circled Seraphina, fingertips grazing fabric at her hip. Unlike the bruises, the gown felt weightless, refusing to press where she still hurt. His gaze met hers in the mirror. Something flickered there. Satisfaction, ownership, and something more curious. You'll be unforgettable, he said. Unforgettable isn't always good, she replied, and it is when I say so. He addressed the room. Finish tonight. I'll send security to escort you back. When he left, Ornette's shoulders sagged. He wants perfection. Does perfection ever exist? Seraphina asked. Not in this world, Ornette said, tight-lipped, and resumed stitching. Hours passed before the final try-on. The gown flowed like captured moonshine, slit gliding up one thigh, back dipping low between shoulder blades. Pearl straps framed her collarbones, drawing eyes to the claimed bite. She stared at herself, shocked at the transformation. A wolfless girl remade into a queen of silver and light, her pain invisible. Back in her suite, Cassandra helped her step from the gown and hung it in a temperature-controlled cabinet. "Rest," she advised. "Tomorrow will be longer." Seraphina nodded, almost too weary to stand. Cassandra exited, promising to return at first light. Alone again, Seraphina drew a glass of water and stood at the window. Night spread across the sky in velvet folds, one first star winking above distant skyscrapers. Somewhere below, engines thrummed. Lives unfolded, choices were made freely. Luxuries she could scarcely fathom. She closed her eyes and reached for the inner silence. This time the void wasn't empty. A hint of warmth pulsed. A soft glow, small as a candle in a vast cave. Not words, but emotion. Sorrow. Longing. The faintest promise of strength. Her heart clenched. "I'm here," she thought. "Can you hear me?" No response, but the warmth steadied like a hand clasping hers across a dark room. Tears slipped free. Quiet. Cleansing. She pressed a palm to her chest, above the sleeping embers of her wolf, and breathed with deliberate calm. "Someday we'll be free," she whispered. "Together." She turned from the window, curled on the bed, and let exhaustion claim her. Above the fortress, clouds drifted away from the moon, bathing the tower in cool light. Inside the quiet chamber, a caged girl slept, and far beneath bruised skin, a dormant wolf dreamed of breaking chains. Seraphina surfaced from a dream in which she ran barefoot across a meadow of moon-white poppies, each bloom opening to reveal a tiny silver wolf that tried to speak, but had no tongue. The images faded as dawn seeped into her suite, painting the ceiling with pale rose. Her first breath felt too thin, as if the air itself was reluctant to enter her lungs on this day. She lay still, listening to the hush of the fortress. Far below, generators hummed. Somewhere on another floor, guards exchanged shifts with quiet bootfalls. Everything felt suspended, waiting for the ceremony that would brand her in a new way. She threw back the duvet and sat up. The polished floor was cool beneath her feet. A pulse beat in the hollow at the base of her throat, matching the slow grind of dread in her stomach. She pressed a palm to her ribs, testing. The bone-knit serum had done its work, but bruises still ripened along her side like dark fruit. She moved to the window. The city beyond the glass shone shyly under sunrise, skyscrapers catching sudden slashes of gold. For a moment, she let herself imagine she was simply a visitor here, maybe a tourist with nothing more pressing than coffee and a map. Then reality settled over her shoulders like chainmail, heavy and unmerciful. A faint knock sounded. She turned as Cassandra stepped in, carrying a tray that smelled of cinnamon and chamomile. The liaison's eyes, always quick to read a room, softened when they landed on Seraphina. "You slept?" Cassandra asked. "Barely." Seraphina managed a thin smile. "Dreams don't know it's a big day." Cassandra set the tray on a small table, poured tea into a porcelain cup, and handed it over. "Drink. It calms nerves, even if only a little." Seraphina sank into a chair, letting steam warm her face. "When I was little," she said, surprising herself with the confession, "my mother would brew tea like this the morning of every Luna festival. She'd braid ribbons into my hair and tell me the moon watched over girls who dared to dance." Cassandra lowered herself to the opposite chair. "She sounds wonderful." She was. The ache of the memory was sharp, but she held it willingly. "Festivals used to thrill me. Lanterns everywhere, music, laughter. I wore a dress she sewed herself, sky blue and dotted with tiny silver beads. I thought I was a star come to earth." Her voice went soft. "Funny how a mind clings to brightness when everything else is dark." Cassandra reached across the table and squeezed her hand. No words were offered, but comfort pulsed through the simple touch. After a moment, Cassandra straightened, businesslike again. "Ornette is downstairs finalizing the gown. Hair and makeup in 40 minutes. Breakfast now. Theon requested you appear flawless by 11. Flawless, Seraphina repeated. That word feels distant. Cassandra's gaze softened again. Flawless is an illusion, but illusions have power in politics. We'll manage. Seraphina sipped the tea, feeling warmth spread through nerves chilled by fear. She closed her eyes and reached inward, searching the space where a wolf should have lived. Yesterday, the silence had been absolute. Now it felt different, as if a door had been cracked somewhere deep inside. Instead of barren stillness, she sensed a draft of warmth, the barest movement of air. Come on, can you hear me? The plea drifted into the quiet. No voice answered, yet a faint shiver rippled through her blood, a tiny acknowledgement that she was not alone. Her eyes flicked open. Cassandra watched, brows knitting. Are you dizzy? Just thinking. Seraphina decided against explaining. Some truths felt fragile, like frost that would vanish if examined too closely. They finished the light meal of oatmeal and berries. Soon, attendants arrived, 2 seamstresses with sleek buns, a hairstylist armed with an arsenal of glossed pins, and a makeup artist whose rolling case clicked ominously. They swarmed around Seraphina with professional courtesy, measuring, pinning, smoothing. The heavy gown, silver satin shaded with deep crimson panels, was eased over her head like a second skin. Thousands of seed pearls shimmered, catching stray beams of sun. When Ornette fastened the hidden clasps at her spine, the weight set her posture straight whether she liked it or not. Lift your chin just a touch, the makeup artist murmured, dusting translucent powder along her jaw. There, your skin's luminous. Seraphina's reflection in the mirror startled her. She looked ethereal, almost unreal. Dark hair swept into an elegant twist, a delicate lattice of pearls woven through glossy strands. The bruise at her throat was concealed by a sweep of corrective cream and a necklace of tiny moonstones. The crown waited on a velvet pillow, silver filigree blossoming into subtle wolf motifs. She stared at herself, feeling hollow. Ornette caught her gaze in the mirror. Breathe, the seamstress whispered. You look strong. Looks can lie, Seraphina replied under her breath. They can, but sometimes they help us believe first, Ornette said. She squeezed Seraphina's shoulder, then stepped back to admire the finished ensemble. If art has a purpose, it's to steal breath. You've done that. Cassandra appeared behind them, clipboard in hand. Carriages arrive in 20 minutes. Sarah, a moment on the balcony? The fresh air will help. They excused themselves from the whirlwind of stylists and moved to the balcony overlooking the south courtyard. The view stretched beyond manicured lawns to the main road, where sleek black cars started to glide through security gates. Wolves in ceremonial armor lined the path. Banners of Bloodthornne crimson rippled beside those of visiting packs. Ash gray, forest green, dusk blue. Seraphina rested her hands on the cold rail. Her gloves were satin, dyed to match her gown, but even the thin barrier couldn't stop the bite of metal. She scanned arriving vehicles, picking out little details. A gold crest on a hood, an entourage of warriors with silver armbands, a Luna stepping out in a gown the color of wildfire. Each new arrival gleamed with confidence, heads high, shoulders relaxed. They belong. She wondered what stories lay beneath their flawless surfaces. How many hid bruises, restless hearts, regrets? The thought unsettled and comforted her simultaneously. Horns announced a new motorcade. Cassandra stiffened. The Lycan King's convoy. A hush rippled across the courtyard. A matte black limousine rolled past the gates, escorted by motorcycles purring like caged beasts. Guards shifted, straightening. A pair of soldier wolves in obsidian armor dismounted, scanned the perimeter, then opened the limo door. A tall figure emerged, shoulders squared beneath a dark suit that seemed to absorb light. Midnight hair brushed his collar. Even at a distance, Seraphina sensed the power in his stance, the subtle ripple of deference around him. Lycan King Anthony. Her breath snagged. Without understanding why, She pressed a hand to her sternum. Warmth flared beneath her ribs, quick and bright, then faded to an ache. Anthony spoke to his attendants, his profile sharp as a blade, then turned toward the fortress entrance and disappeared from view. Cassandra exhaled. He rarely attends lesser ceremonies. Theon must be pleased. Seraphina's mouth felt dry. He's different from the others. He leads them, Cassandra said simply. Royal blood. Old blood. They returned inside to finish small adjustments. At 11 precisely, guards escorted Seraphina through mirrored corridors toward the grand ballroom. The double doors opened on a space transformed by floral arches, crystal chandeliers, and shimmering banners. Hundreds of eyes turned. Murmurs swelled and faded like a tide as she stepped onto the runner, its crimson surface reflecting pearl embroidery. Theon waded ahead, flanked by advisors. He wore a ceremonial jacket trimmed in silver, and his expression was polished pride. As she approached, he offered his arm. She laid trembling fingers on porcelain-smooth fabric. You look magnificent, he murmured. Remember, every gaze is currency. She managed a nod, focusing on the runner so her footsteps remained steady. Within moments, they reached a dais beneath a tiered crescent of candles. An elder officiant, hair white, robes gray, lifted a polished staff and spoke words about unity, strength, and the sanctity of alliances. Seraphina heard them distantly, like echoes in a vaulted church, while her heartbeat drummed louder than any oath. Theon addressed the assembly. His speech flowed with practiced ease. Tributes to the visiting alphas, nods to ancient traditions, praise for their progressive alliance. He spoke of Seraphina as his guiding moon, a beacon of grace, the promise of renewal. The words felt foreign on her skin, but she stood unmoving, expression serene. At the proper moment, Theon turned and lifted the crown from its velvet cradle. He placed it upon her head with theatrical gentleness, then kissed her knuckles before the throng. Applause rose, orchestrated yet thunderous. Theon motioned for her to speak. Seraphina stepped forward. The candles flickered, casting halos. She scanned the sea of faces, some curious, some calculating, some blank. She thought of her mother's lullabies, of nights hiding in the woods nursing bruises, of the little girl who had once danced under lanterns. She inhaled, letting the scent of roses and polished silver fill her lungs. Thank you, she began, voice clear but soft. Today is a day of promises. Some promises feel heavy, others light. I have carried heavy silence for many years. Silence can crush, or it can carve space for something new. Today I vow to fill that space with purpose. I will rise for those who cannot lift their own heads, speak for those whose words have been taken, and stand beside my alpha to build a house where no voice is forgotten. In rising, we lift others. In unity, we find strength. The hall hushed. She felt the hush travel through bodies like a shared breath. Something in her chest expanded, surprised at its own courage. When she finished, the applause that followed held a raw note of respect she'd never felt aimed at her before. She turned her head subtly, scanning the upper level, her gaze locked with a pair of golden eyes. Anthony stood behind a carved balustrade, his posture rigid, his expression unreadable. But she felt it, an invisible tether snapping taut between them. A current surged through her veins, hot and unstoppable, her knees nearly buckled. Inside her mind, where silence had reigned, a pulse of wild heat thundered once. She swayed. Cassandra, stationed nearby, took an imperceptible step forward in case she fell. Anthony's eyes widened fractionally as if he heard the same thunder. His lips parted. For a heartbeat, the crowded ballroom fell away. She saw only him, felt only the thrum of something ancient, binding, undeniable. Then the Lycan King turned sharply and strode from the gallery. The golden gaze vanished. Gasps rippled among the observers who noticed his abrupt departure. Theon's fingers tightened around her waist. Beneath the applause, his voice carried, silked with menace. "What did you do?" "Nothing," she whispered, pulse racing. "Don't lie to me," he hissed, face frozen in a host's smile for the crowd. "We'll discuss this backstage." The ceremony concluded in a blur of formalities. Seraphina smiled, accepted compliments, bowed her head. Inside, her thoughts spun like leaves in a storm. What had she felt? Why did it hurt and soothe in the same breath? The warmth in her chest pulsed again, stronger, and suddenly the silence where her wolf dwelled rippled with the impression of a heartbeat not her own. She stumbled slightly, catching herself. A guard announced intermission. Musicians began a waltz for mingling guests. Theon guided her through a side door behind the dais, his grip iron. They entered a corridor lined with velvet drapes. The moment the door shut, Theon shoved her against the wall. The impact jarred her, crown tilting. "You embarrassed me," he seethed, every syllable coated in ice. "The Lycan King left during your moment. Do you understand the optics?" "I did nothing," she repeated, voice shaking. "I looked at him, that's all." "You looked at him like you'd discovered a god?" His eyes blazed. "And he looked at you like he wanted to claim what's mine." The accusation stole her breath. "I don't know what happened, I swear." Footsteps approached. Theon released her and stepped back as Cassandra rounded the corner. "Guests await the first dance," Cassandra said, eyes flicking between them. Theon slipped a mask of composure over his fury. "We will return shortly." He offered Seraphina his arm again. She took it, fingers numb, and allowed him to lead her back toward the music, though every step felt heavier than the last. The waltz drifted through the ballroom like fog over water, porcelain smooth yet chilling. Seraphina stepped onto the dance floor with Theon, her palm resting in his gloved hand, her free hand poised on his shoulder. The gown's heavy skirt swished against polished marble as he guided her into the first sweeping turn. From a distance, they must have looked regal, perfectly synchronized. Up close, tension vibrated in the scant space between their bodies. "Smile," he whispered, jaw tight. "The photographers are everywhere." Seraphina forced her lips upward. Her cheeks felt frozen despite the heat of chandeliers. On the edge of the floor, dignitaries conversed in tight clusters. A camera drone hovered near the ceiling, its faint whir overshadowed by strings and piano. With each pivot, she caught flashes of faces, Lunas comparing gowns, betas discussing finance, two alphas throwing envious glances at Theon's alliance trophy. Theon's fingers pressed into her waist at every swirl, a subtle reminder of ownership. "You'll introduce yourself to High Alpha Rourke after this dance," he murmured as they glided. "Mention your philanthropic wing. Impress him. His timber roots would triple our supply lines." She nodded once, counting the steps. The grand hall blurred around her, colors smeared by motion. Still, she searched unconsciously for a figure who was no longer present. The moment her gaze flicked toward the balcony where Anthony had stood, Theon jerked her closer. "Focus," he growled so low no one else could hear. "I'm listening," she said. She kept her eyes on him for the rest of the dance, though her pulse beat at an erratic tempo. The waltz ended, applause scattering like bird wings. Theon released her hand to bow. She curtsied with practiced grace. As couples dispersed, he guided her toward High Alpha Rourke, a broad-chested man whose dark mustache curled like a villain in an old movie. Rourke's Luna stood nearby in an emerald gown, eyes bright with curiosity. "High Alpha Rourke," Theon said smoothly. "Allow me to present my Luna, Seraphina of Ashwood, now of Bloodthornne." Rourke's gaze roved over Seraphina appraisingly. "A pleasure," he rumbled, voice thick as pine resin. "You honor us with your poise, Lady Seraphina." "Thank you." She inclined her head. "I've heard your territory boasts deep forests. Bloodthornne's new charity wing could use sustainable timber partners for building clinics." Rourke's eyebrows lifted, clearly impressed. She came prepared. "Ambitious. We might discuss terms." His Luna stepped in, offering Seraphina a genuine smile. They exchanged a soft greeting, but Theon cut the conversation short with a polite nod, already scanning the room for the next contact. They moved from group to group: Alpha Shreya of the Northern Glades, Lord Jared of the Silver Coast, Luna Mirei of Riverfang, who complimented Seraphina's pearls, then whispered, "You look brave." Theon's confidence grew with every handshake, but under his polished surface simmered a wary edge. Whenever someone mentioned Anthony's abrupt exit, did the Lycan King fall ill? Perhaps urgent business? Theon's jaw twitched. Between introductions, Seraphina caught snippets of gossip. "I heard the Lycan King's wolf surfaced without warning. Maybe Bloodthornne's wine was too strong. But did you see his eyes when he looked at the new Luna? Like the moon struck him." Whispers flickered at the edges of her awareness, fanning the flicker inside her chest into a nervous flame. Her wolf stirred again, a twitch of muscle just beneath her skin, a silent thump like a hand against glass. The sensation shocked her so suddenly she missed a beat in conversation, nearly dropping her champagne flute. Cassandra materialized at her side, steadying the glass. "Breathe," she mouthed. Theon didn't notice. He was busy charming a shipping magnate. Cassandra's discreet presence became a lifeline. She guided Seraphina toward a side table laden with canapes, shielding her from prying eyes while she recovered. "Drink water," Cassandra murmured, pressing a crystal tumbler into her hands. Seraphina sipped, grateful for the coolness. "Something's wrong with me," she whispered. "Or something's finally waking," Cassandra replied. "Your eyes keep flashing silver at the edges. No one else has noticed yet. Keep calm." Silver, the color of a wolf's eyes in mid-shift. A dizzy tremor fluttered behind Seraphina's sternum. She focused on the rhythmic clink of cutlery, the swell of violins, grounding herself in details. Another waltz began. Guests returned to the floor in pairs. Theon reappeared at her elbow. "We dance again. The photographer missed the perfect shot earlier." His smile froze when he saw the water. "Don't ruin your makeup with sweat." "That depends on how vigorous the steps are," she said lightly, but tension threaded through her words. He guided her back under the chandeliers. This time movement felt different. The melody spun them through a pattern she barely followed. Her skin prickled, senses sharpening. She could hear the precise exhale of each musician. She could smell the underlying musk of wolfsbane perfume on a passing Luna. She felt Theon's heartbeat where his palm lay against her spine, steady but quickening whenever their gazes met. Mid-turn, her eyes lifted instinctively to the balcony. Anthony still wasn't there, but the space where he had stood felt weighted, charged. She stumbled. Theon's grip tightened, nails biting through satin. "Control yourself," he hissed at her ear. "You're Luna now, act like it." She righted herself, forcing rhythm back into her limbs. Around them couples twirled, gowns fanning like captured moons. And yet Seraphina felt miles from glamour, anchored to an invisible line tugging her somewhere else, toward a pulse she couldn't locate. Her wolf pounded once more, a muted drum. She inhaled sharply. The waltz concluded. Applause blossomed again. Theon bowed, but his smile felt brittle. Before she could gather breath, a steward approached, murmuring something that made Theon's eyes narrow. "What do you mean he requests an audience later?" Theon demanded. The steward bowed deeply. "The Lycan King's beta delivered the message, Alpha. His Majesty requests a private discussion about this alliance, tonight." Theon's hand on Seraphina's waist turned vice-like. "Inform him I will set the time. I will not be summoned like a subordinate." The steward blanched. He implied, "Urgency, sir." Theon's jaw flexed. "Very well. Midnight in my strategy chamber, and no one else but his beta. Go." The steward hurried off. Theon faced Seraphina, fury masked only by necessity. "Change into something more modest after the reception. You'll attend." "Midnight?" She tried to keep her tone neutral. "Will the guests not notice our absence?" "I'll manage the guests." Your job is to stand silent and look reverent. He scanned her face. And whatever happened between you and that king ends tonight. He's a stranger. Her voice shook. I don't understand any of this. His eyes hardened. Then try harder. Cassandra arrived, announcing dinner service. Theon smoothed his expression and escorted Seraphina to the head table. Long courses arrived. Herb-crusted lamb, truffle risotto, delicate towers of glazed vegetables. She tasted none of it. Conversation ebbed and flowed around them. Commerce, territory disputes, wedding speculation. Yet each syllable passed through her ears as meaningless noise. She kept her back straight, cutting lamb into perfect bites she never ate, smiling on cue. At times Theon's thigh brushed hers under the table, a silent warning. Once, she felt Cassandra's shoe tap hers gently. A coded check-in. Seraphina exhaled, sipping water. The taste of jasmine lingered from earlier tea, a reminder that comfort was a subtle rebellion. Dessert arrived. Spun sugar roses perched on molten chocolate cake. The room shimmered beneath chandeliers. At the opposite end of the table, Rourke's Luna laughed at something her mate whispered. The sound felt remote, like bird song beyond stone walls. Finally, Theon rose, glass in hand. Friends, he called, voice mellow yet ringing. Your presence here seals a future of shared prosperity. As we toast to alliances strong as steel, I promise that Bloodthornne will guard our bonds with vigilance. Guests lifted flutes. Seraphina mirrored them, though champagne fizzed noiselessly in her ears. Theon turned to her for the ceremonial kiss. He brushed lips against her cheek, a public show of tenderness. Cameras flashed. When guests dispersed to lounge areas stocked with cigars and cognac, Theon gripped her elbow. You'll greet the delegation from Ravenstone now. His gaze locked on hers, daring defiance. She nodded, aware rebellion would only hurt innocent staff later. They walked toward a cluster of tall men in gray suits. Conversation resumed. Timber contracts, security drones, border regulations. Plastering a serene expression, Seraphina navigated small talk, internal voice screaming for quiet. At last, the reception wound down. Guests trickled out under starry sky, chauffeurs guiding them to sleek vehicles. Musicians packed instruments, servers doused flickering candles. Cassandra approached. Your quarters await, she said gently. Not yet, Theon cut in. She will change and meet me in the strategy chamber by midnight. Cassandra's eyes flickered with concern. Of course, I'll accompany her. They stepped aside as two janitors swept confetti from marble. Quiet descended. Theon strode off to speak with his beta. Cassandra guided Seraphina along a silent corridor, guards a respectful distance behind. Are you steady? Cassandra asked under her breath. No, Seraphina admitted, but I'll manage. In her suite, Cassandra removed the crown, unpinned hair, helped slip the heavy gown off aching shoulders. She laid out a new ensemble, a simple floor-length dress of midnight blue silk, high collar, long sleeves, modest, elegant, defensive. Seraphina changed, wincing as fabric brushed the bruise hidden by makeup. Cassandra met her gaze in the mirror. Midnight meetings rarely bode well. I'll stay outside the room. Thank you. Seraphina smoothed the dress, though her hands trembled. Did you see Anthony after he left? I didn't, Cassandra said. But I spoke with the head of his guard. They said he retired to a private lounge. No one has gone in or out. Did he ask about me? No. Cassandra hesitated. But his guard noted he seemed unsettled. The word lodged in Seraphina's ribs, unsettled. I'm not the only one. At 11:45, they left for the strategy chamber, a room deep within the fortress. The corridor was dimly lit, lined with framed maps. Guards outside the chamber saluted Theon when he arrived moments later. Seraphina smelled his cologne before she saw him, sharp, forested, laced with the faintest metallic edge. Tension hung off him like frost. "Remember," he murmured, eyes narrowed. Silence. Doors opened. The chamber was expansive, dominated by a holographic map table glowing blue. Anthony stood at the opposite side, cloak removed, suit jacket unbuttoned. His beta, a lean wolf with ash-blonde hair, hovered near a projection console. When Anthony turned toward them, candle sconces flickered, sending shadows skittering over his face. Theon forced a diplomatic smile. "Your Majesty, I trust your evening is well." Anthony's eyes brushed over Theon, then fixed on Seraphina. Heat punched through space. Her knees weakened. She caught a breath. That invisible tether pulled tight, sending a pulse of recognition down her spine. Her wolf didn't just flutter this time, it slammed like a fist against her ribcage, demanding existence. Anthony's nostrils flared. He addressed Theon, voice low and resonant. "We need to talk about your alliance's long-term implications." "Of course," Theon gestured to chairs. "Shall we sit?" Anthony remained standing. A silent power standoff. Theon's smile tightened. Seraphina stood between them, heart knocking. Anthony's gaze flicked to her again. His eyes shone gold for an instant, wolf at the surface. He exhaled through his nose, clearly fighting some inner reaction. Seraphina's breath caught. It felt like the room narrowed until only the two of them remained, drawn together by a law older than anything carved on stone. Theon cleared his throat. "My Luna will observe quietly." He clasped her elbow, subtle possessive squeeze. Anthony's jaw twitched at the contact. He turned to the hologram, voice even. "Bloodthornne's new timber routes intersect existing royal shipping lanes. I expect full transparency." "Transparency is guaranteed," Theon said, stepping to the table. "Our contracts—" Suddenly the chamber doors groaned open. An elderly woman stepped through, cloaked in deep violet, silver hair braided with tiny bones. Guards reached for weapons but froze when Anthony lifted a hand. Theon's eyes flashed. "Who allowed entry?" The woman's gaze pinned Seraphina. Ancient, knowing, unfathomably gentle. "The moon moves unseen by guards," she said, voice like wind through pines. She walked forward, ignoring Theon's sputter. "Child, your spirit bleeds," she said to Seraphina. "Yet your blood sings a prophecy." Seraphina's voice trembled. "Who are you?" "Shaman Isara of the Old Crescent," Anthony said quietly. "My spiritual advisor." Isara inclined her head. "The threads of fate tangle tonight. You two are woven by starlight, bound before birth." Theon stepped between Isara and Seraphina. "Enough riddles. Leave." Isara's eyes sparkled. "You cannot hold what was never yours, Alpha." She touched Seraphina's wrist lightly. A spark flared, a shockwave through flesh and bone. Seraphina gasped. The silent wolf inside her roared, a soundless quake. She swayed, vision white-hot for a heartbeat. When clarity returned, Isara was already backing away. Anthony's fists clenched at his sides. "Isara," he warned, but his own voice shook faintly. Isara smiled. "Truth will find its voice." She turned and walked out, cloak brushing marble. Guards parted, unsettled. Theon rounded on Seraphina, eyes blazing. "What did she do?" I don't know," Seraphina stammered, pulse drumming in her temples. Anthony addressed her directly, voice low. "Did she hurt you?" Theon snapped. "Address me, not my Luna, Your Majesty." Anthony's eyes remained on Seraphina. "Are you hurt?" She swallowed. "No." Anthony exhaled, tension unspooling a fraction. He turned to Theon. "Your alliance encroaches royal lands. We'll renegotiate terms in 1 month. Until then, cease expansion." Theon bristled. "I won't be dictated to." "That was not a request," Anthony said, each word forged of iron. 1 month. He gestured to his beta. They turned to leave. Theon's face reddened. "This meeting is far from over." Anthony paused at the doors, half turning. Indeed. But tonight, we are finished. His gaze brushed Seraphina once more, softening something cold behind gold irises. Then he walked out. Doors closed. Theon's fury burst free in the sudden silence. He grabbed Seraphina's arm so hard she winced. "You let that witch touch you." "I had no choice," she whispered. "You always have a choice," he snarled. "Choose me." Her heart hammered. "Choose—" The word tangled on her tongue. He released her, pacing like a caged predator. "Go to your room. Tomorrow we begin remedying this humiliation." His gaze burned. "We forge the full mate bond, seal our fate, and erase these distractions." Her stomach twisted. "You can't force—" His eyes glittered. "Watch me." He stalked from the chamber, boots echoing down the corridor. Seraphina stood alone, breath shaky, the map table casting blue light across her dress. She pressed a hand to her chest. Inside, her wolf was no longer silent. It paced, restless, sensing a door in the darkness. Cassandra slipped in, eyes wide. "I couldn't get close, guards. What happened?" Seraphina's lips parted, but words failed. Instead, a whisper floated out, barely audible. "He saw me." Cassandra frowned. "Who?" "The Lycan King." Tears slipped down Seraphina's cheeks. "And now I can't unsee him." Cassandra led Seraphina back to the suite like a lighthouse through fog, steady and quiet. The corridor lights dimmed on night cycle, casting everything in cool blue. When the door shut behind them, the fortress hum softened to a low purr. Cassandra crossed to the kitchenette, filled a glass with water, and pressed it into Seraphina's hands. "You're shaking," Cassandra said. "I feel like I swallowed thunder," Seraphina whispered. She set the glass down and pressed her palm to her sternum. The warmth inside had become a pulse, not constant, but insistent, beating in a rhythm that was not entirely her own. "I don't know what's happening to me." Cassandra's eyes searched her face. "I have a guess. You locked eyes with him and everything changed." Seraphina's throat tightened around the memory. It felt like a hook, like something reached into me and pulled, and for a moment I wasn't afraid. "That's what they say about fated bonds." Cassandra's voice was gentle but firm. "It's not just scent or sight. It's recognition at the marrow. You didn't do anything wrong." "But I'm married to Theon." The word felt like a collar clicking shut. "This is impossible." "The world doesn't ask permission to be complicated," Cassandra said. She took Seraphina's hands, the contact anchoring. "For now, breathe, drink, sit." She guided her to the sofa. "Do you want me to stay?" Seraphina nodded, grateful. They sat in companionable silence except for the clock's soft tick. After a while, Seraphina found words. "Isara touched me. It felt like she lit a match in a cavern." "I saw her leave the wing," Cassandra said. Half the guards made the sign against witchcraft. The other half tried not to look fascinated. A faint curve touched her mouth. "She has a reputation for being right in the ways that make alphas uncomfortable." Seraphina let out a breath that was almost a laugh. "That seems to be her talent." Cassandra squeezed her hand once more, then stood. "Shower, change into something soft. I'll wait right here and make tea." She hesitated at the door to the bath. "And if you feel your heart racing too fast or you get dizzy, call me immediately." "Why?" "Because a bond awakening can strain a dormant wolf. Your body hasn't carried that energy before." Seraphina nodded and moved into the bathroom. Steam fogged the mirror within minutes, blurring the bruises and the new crown lines pressed into her scalp. She stood under water that ran just shy of hot, letting the pressure knot at her shoulders and then release. Eyes closed, she reached inward again. "Are you there?" The silence answered differently now. Not with emptiness, but with the sense of a presence just beyond a thin wall. Heat spread from her chest to her fingertips, tingling. Her breath hitched. She thought she felt a brush of fur where there was only skin, a flick of a tail at the edge of her awareness. The sensation vanished like a shy animal darting behind trees. She exhaled, a sound that was half sob, half relief. Wrapped in a robe, she returned to find Cassandra on the sofa with 2 steaming mugs. They drank tea, the floral notes unclenching a knot behind Seraphina's ribs. When fatigue pulled at her eyelids, Cassandra stood. "I'll sleep on the chaise," Cassandra said, already moving a pillow to the long window seat. "You're not alone." Seraphina wanted to protest. Instead, she whispered, "Thank you." She changed into a soft t-shirt and cotton shorts, climbed into bed, and stared at the ceiling. The suite was quiet except for the murmur of the city far below and the faint click of the HVAC. The invisible tether that connected her to Anthony hummed like a power line in winter. She turned to her side, curled around the ache and the warmth, and finally drifted. Across the fortress, in a private lounge lit only by a single-floor lamp, Anthony stood with both hands braced on a table, head bowed. The room smelled of citrus oil and old books. His beta, ash-blonde hair neatly combed, tie loosened, stood a few paces away, saying nothing until silence grew heavy. "Say it," Anthony murmured without lifting his head. The beta cleared his throat. "You walked out in front of every alpha on the eastern seaboard." "I know. And you did it because the new Luna looked at you like the moon had found her." Anthony lifted his head. Golden irises flashed, then cooled to topaz. "It wasn't her looking that did it." His jaw worked, a muscle jumping. "It was what happened to me." The beta nodded slowly. "Name it." "My wolf did." Anthony's mouth twisted in something like disbelief and surrender. "Aurelian woke the moment our eyes met." The beta exhaled, letting the name settle in the air. "After all these years?" Aurelian's voice rolled through Anthony's mind, molten and impatient. "Mine. She is ours. Go back. Claim." Anthony shut his eyes briefly and the internal landscape brightened. He saw flashes, a forest under snow, the gleam of a river, a dark-haired woman standing in a field of poppies with her face turned toward him. Aurelian paced within, all muscle and gold, energy contained with difficulty. "We will not take what is not free to be given," Anthony told him. "She calls. She smells like winter sunrise." Aurelian's growl softened to a rumble of longing. "The other male reeks of iron and smoke. He harms her." Anthony's hand curled into a fist on the table edge. He had smelled it too, beneath perfume and powder. The sterile sting of antiseptic, and the copper ghost of old blood. Rage sharpened behind his sternum, but he forced the blade to remain sheathed. "We will protect her," he told the wolf, "but not like thieves." He opened his eyes and found the beta watching him carefully. "Dorian," Anthony said, calling the beta by name. "Theon will try to seal the bond to cover his fear." Dorian nodded once. "He'll move quickly. He knows he can't match you in open challenge, so he'll fortify what he believes he already owns." Aurelian snorted in disdain. The echo reverberated in Anthony's bones. "Post 2 royal observers on the Bloodthornne wing," Anthony said. "Discreet but visible. If Theon attempts a violation of royal decree, they report to me immediately." "Under what pretext?" Dorian asked. "The safety of visiting royalty," Anthony said, "and the safety of a newly crowned Luna whose alliance touches royal lanes." He rubbed his temple. The image of Seraphina's face had imprinted on his vision, as stubborn as an after-image from staring at the sun. Not just beauty, fragility wrapped around a core that refused to fracture. He had felt it in her speech, the way she built a promise out of silence. Dorian studied him. "Do you want me to contact Isara?" "She's already 3 steps ahead," Anthony said. As if summoned, a soft knock sounded. The door opened and Isara slipped inside, violet cloak trailing, silver hair glowing in lamplight. She did not bow. She did not need to. "You left her with a promise you didn't speak," Isara said, voice low. "The body hears what the mouth won't say." Anthony straightened. What did you do when you touched her? Opened a window, Isara said. Her wolf has been hiding in a room without doors. The window gives light. Dorian frowned. Is that safe? Isara's eyes softened. It is necessary. Dormancy born of terror is a coma of the soul. She needs love and time, not commands. She turned to Anthony. And you need patience. If you claim in anger, you mirror the man who hurt her. I won't claim without her consent, Anthony said. The words felt like iron in his mouth, both burden and oath. Good, Isara said. Then remember, consent is not simply a nod in a chapel. It is the body sighing yes, the spirit leaning forward. Wait for that. She moved toward the door. Theon will try to force what the moon did not grant him. Her gaze sharpened. Royal law forbids coercion of the mate bond. Then he risks my hand if he tries, Anthony replied, voice gone quiet and lethal. Isara touched the doorframe, listening to something only she could hear. Her heart just calmed. Your name sits on her tongue in sleep. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Interesting. After she left, Dorian exhaled. Do I ready the convoy in case we need to extract? Not yet, Anthony said, but be ready to move quietly. He looked down at his hands that had signed peace accords and held dying warriors and never trembled. Now his fingers shook. He closed them into fists until they stilled. I won't lose her to a contract. In another wing, Theon paced his office with wolf-quick strides, tie loosened, eyes flashing green whenever his control slipped. Alaric stood near the window, hands folded behind his back, face kept neutral by long practice. You saw it, Theon snapped. Oh, you saw the way he looked at her. I saw a king who felt something and didn't like it, Alaric replied carefully. It rattled him. It can rattle him from a continent away, Theon said. Here, it threatens this alliance. Alaric waited, letting Theon burn off the first flare of rage. What do you want me to do? Double security around her suite. Disable guest access to the Luna level. Theon stalked to his desk and stabbed a finger at the intercom. Get Dr. Valen. A few minutes later, Valen entered carrying a data slate. He took in the taut lines of Theon's body and the way Alaric's jaw was set, and shifted his tone to precise professionalism. You called Alpha. Theon leaned on the desk. I want suppressants. Valen's eyes chilled. For what exactly? The bond, Theon said. If there's the faintest chance that King's scent or presence could push her into believing she belongs to him, I want it damped. She will not go soft in public when he passes by. Valen's mouth flattened. Bond suppressants blunt a wolf's instincts. They were designed for triage, not politics. Side effects include dissociation, migraines, nausea, irregular heartbeat, in rare cases, seizures. She's already dissociated half her life, Theon snapped. She'll manage. I'm her physician, Valen said quietly, not your enforcer. Theon's smile was all teeth. You're both if you want to keep your lab funded. Prepare a nasal dose. Low level. If I tell you to administer, you will. Valen's gaze slid to Alaric, who did not look away but did not intervene. I'll prepare it, Valen said at last, voice stiff with dislike. But I recommend against use unless medical necessity demands it. Your recommendations are noted, Theon said, dismissing him with a flick of his hand. When the doctor left, Theon turned to Alaric. Schedule a ritual supper for dawn 2 days from now. Small, private. I will move her toward acceptance. Meaning? Alaric asked, though he already knew. Meaning I begin what the moon refused me, Theon said. His eyes flashed again, wolf surging near the skin. Inside him, Vargos snarled approval, claws scoring along the edges of Theon's self-control. Take. Mark. Make her yours. Alaric's voice stayed calm. Royal observers are in the wing. Let them watch, Theon said. I won't break laws. I'll persuade. He smiled a slow, reptilian smile. Everyone yields to something. Alaric's gaze tightened. If you push too hard, you'll snap the wire and lose everything. Theon stepped close. You've served me long enough to know I don't snap wires. I play whole orchestras. He straightened his cuffs. Send guards to the Luna's door. Alaric bowed his head, then left. In the hallway, he paused and let his composure slip just enough to press thumb and forefinger to his eyes. He had seen good men turn to flint in the presence of fear. He wasn't sure Theon counted as a good man anymore. He moved because duty demanded motion, and because Seraphina had no defenders left, but those who found small ways to slow storms. Inside the suite, Cassandra woke to the soft whir of the door scanner engaging. She rose from the chaise and peered through the peephole. 2 guards took positions like statues. She wrote a quick message on her tablet and slid it beneath Seraphina's door. When Seraphina stirred and sat up, blinking, Cassandra was already there, tapping gently. Sorry, Cassandra said. Didn't mean to wake you. Security changed. Theon's got guards on the door now. Seraphina's heartbeat sped. Am I a prisoner? You're a Luna, Cassandra said dryly, which often amounts to the same thing. Seraphina bit her lip, then lifted the note and read Cassandra's second line. Valen was summoned. Suppressants, a possibility. I'll try to intercept. The room tilted half a degree. He wants to drug me, Seraphina whispered. Maybe, Cassandra said. Valen protested. He'll hesitate, but be prepared. If anyone you don't know offers you a drink, food, or a spray near your face, refuse. I'll shadow your schedule. Seraphina nodded, throat tight. I hate that I'm grateful for a cage because it keeps him from walking in. We'll replace the locks on your mind with something else, Cassandra said. Routines you choose. People who help. She hesitated, then reached into her blazer pocket and pulled out a small object wrapped in cloth. A woman in the elevator pressed this into my hand. Said it belonged to you. Seraphina unwrapped the cloth. A small pendant lay inside, a sliver of white stone threaded on a thin silver chain, carved into a crescent. It felt cool and somehow warm at once, like water warmed by sun after sitting in shade. Isara, Seraphina breathed. She lifted the chain over her head. The pendant settled against her skin with the weight of a promise. The warmth inside her chest flared, gentle and steady. Keep it hidden, Cassandra advised. No need to give Theon one more thing to confiscate. Seraphina tucked the pendant beneath her shirt. She closed her eyes and reached for the new heat. This time the presence inside pressed back. Not words, not yet, but a sense like a head lifting, ears pricking. She exhaled on a shaky laugh. What? Cassandra asked. She listened, Seraphina said. She's there. Cassandra smiled outright, lines around her eyes deepening with relief. Good. Then we move carefully, and we move forward. The rest of the night stretched and nodded. Seraphina drifted in and out of shallow sleep on the sofa, while Cassandra drafted a schedule that placed herself or Valen near Seraphina at every turn. Outside the door, guards shifted weight every hour, boots whispering on carpet. Twice a patrol passed with the soft clink of armor. The city's nocturne rose and fell. Near dawn, a text pinged on Cassandra's tablet. She glanced at it and swore under her breath. What? Seraphina asked, pushing herself upright. Royal observers posted on your floor, Cassandra said, showing her the discreet notice from security. That's a blessing and a warning. Theon will be on edge. Are they spies? Seraphina asked. Witnesses, Cassandra said. The Crown likes receipts. She set the tablet down. I'll make coffee. Seraphina moved to the window, the world outside fading from inky blue to soft lavender. In the glass, she saw her reflection superimposed on the city. Messy ponytail, bruised throat, the hint of a pendant's chain glinting at her collar. She looked both breakable and lit from within, and for a moment, she believed the latter might one day eclipse the former. A knock sounded. Cassandra stiffened, then checked the peephole. She relaxed a fraction and opened the door to reveal Dr. Valen. coat immaculate, eyes weary. "I have something for you," Valen said, stepping inside. He held up 2 small vials. "Electrolyte solution with B vitamins. You'll need stamina if they insist on parading you again today." Seraphina accepted one wary. Valen understood and uncapped his own, taking a healthy swallow. "Not a trap," he said dryly. "If I were poisoning you, I'd choose better packaging." "Did Theon ask you to bring anything else?" Cassandra asked, plain and direct. Valen's mouth thinned. "He asked for suppressants in reserve. I declined to bring them unless I assess medical necessity. I left them in my lab." "Thank you," Cassandra said. "I didn't do it for gratitude," Valen said. His gaze softened on Seraphina. "I did it because the right thing is occasionally still possible." He glanced at the door. "Also, for your awareness, 2 royal observers are stationed at either end of the corridor. If anything concerns you, raise your voice." After he left, Seraphina and Cassandra exchanged a look that contained more hope than either was ready to voice aloud. Seraphina sipped the electrolyte, the sour sweet hit waking her tongue and mind. She showered again, put on a simple day dress, and braided her hair with quick, deft fingers that had learned to make order out of chaos. By the time morning fully arrived, the fortress stirred. Breakfast trays rattled down hallways. Drones lifted from their docking stations and buzzed toward perimeter checks. Cassandra adjusted a schedule block to include a 30-minute stop in the greenhouse. She sent it to Theon's office with diplomatic phrasing. The reply came back moments later. "Approved. Escort required." "Small victories," Cassandra said. On his way to the garage, Theon scanned overnight reports on his phone. The convoy for the Lycan King remained on site. Royal observers stationed. Alaric's security rotation updated. He pocketed the device and stepped into the elevator. His reflection stared back at him from the mirrored walls, handsome and tired and something else he didn't like to name. Jealousy looked ugly on a man who prized control. Vargos prowled in his skull, restless and irritated. The old wolf's voice scratched like thorn branches. "The king smells like sun on stone. He thinks he can take. We take first. We hold what we've built." Theon answered, jaw tightening. He knew that voice too well to mistake it for wisdom. Hunger wore many faces. He straightened his shoulders. "We do this my way," he said aloud to the empty elevator, and the doors opened on a hallway that smelled faintly of orchids and risk. Anthony stood at the far end of the royal wing corridor, looking like he'd stepped out of a storm and brought its hush with him. He wasn't supposed to be there. He had left the lounge before dawn, haunted by the sense that putting floors between himself and Seraphina would not quiet Aurelian enough to let him sleep. He told himself he was checking on security. He told himself he was measuring the fortress's weaknesses. He told himself many things, most of them true, and all of them insufficient. A royal observer saluted. Anthony nodded, then turned to the window where glass reflected a sliver of a room 2 doors down. He could not see her, but he felt the quiver in the tether, a gentle tug as if the current ran between them and any movement on one end sent ripples to the other. "We should leave," Aurelian said without conviction. "Standing outside a door will not change fate." "It changes nothing," Anthony agreed, and yet he did not move. He stood there in silence until his phone buzzed with a message from Dorian. The words were simple. "Theon will try to rush a private ritual. Isara says patience. Be ready." He slid the phone back into his pocket. Patience had never felt like such a violent act. Inside the suite, Seraphina sat at the vanity, untwisting the braid she'd just woven because her fingers wanted the comfort of doing it again. She glanced at the clock. Morning, then afternoon, and by nightfall the ceremony would be a story told in 100 versions. Some would speak of the gown. Some would gossip about the king's exit. Very few would mention the girl's eyes when she said she would rise from silence. Cassandra checked her watch. "Greenhouse in 5?" she asked. "Yes," Seraphina said. She lifted the pendant from beneath her shirt and let it rest against her palm. It was warm now, as if it remembered the press of Isara's hand. She closed her fist around it and thought of poppies and snow and a pair of golden eyes that had looked at her like she was not a symbol or a transaction, but a person the world had been waiting for. The warmth inside her chest answered deeper and steadier than before. Not a voice. Not yet. But a promise that felt very close to one. Cassandra guided Seraphina to the rooftop greenhouse just after midday. Warm glass filtered winter sun onto rows of fragrant herbs and orchids. Guards waited at each exit, but among the leaves and loamy air, Seraphina felt the first pocket of calm since the ceremony. She brushed lavender with her fingertips, inhaling the clean, pine-sweet scent. 5 minutes, one guard warned. Cassandra arched a brow and turned away so he wouldn't see her roll her eyes. Touch everything quickly, she murmured. Seraphina smiled. In the shade of a blooming lemon tree, she opened her fist, letting the pendant catch a ray of light. Heat spread from stone to skin. Inside, her wolf stirred again. Not a jolt this time, but a slow awakening like someone stretching after a long sleep. A fragile sense of gratitude washed through her. Hers, and not hers alone. The door clicked. Theon entered, crisp in slate gray, Alaric at his heel. His gaze swept the greenery, landing on the pendant before Seraphina could tuck it away. Something predatory flashed in his eyes. "We leave," he said. "Preparations begin tonight. Dawn ritual, private chapel. Your acceptance will be public within 3 days." Cassandra stepped forward. "Alpha Royal Observers need 48 hours notice for any ritual involving the Luna. Then they'll observe." Theon offered his hand to Seraphina. Command, not invitation. She slipped the pendant under her collar and let him lead her out. Afternoon dissolved in fittings and rehearsals for a dawn vow Seraphina wanted no part of. Valen checked her vitals, subtle frown deepening when he noted elevated pulse. He said nothing while Theon stood nearby, but pressed a mint-scented salve into her palm as she left. "For headaches," he mouthed. Twilight draped the city in copper. Guards escorted Seraphina back to her suite. Royal observers nodded as she passed. Cassandra waited inside, eyes bright with unspoken worry. "He means to bind you at dawn," she said. "I know." Seraphina traced the pendant through her dress. "But the moon still moves." Night settled. Cassandra slept on the chaise again, tablet close. Seraphina lay awake until stars pricked the sky, then drifted into dream. She stood on a silver plain beneath a vast pale moon. Wind rippled black hair across her face. Ahead, a figure approached. Tall, regal, golden-eyed. Anthony stopped an arm's length away, gaze gentle and fierce all at once. No words passed, yet she sensed his vow. "I will not let him break you." Behind him, a great wolf of burnished gold paced, eyes matching his own. The tether between them pulsed like a heartbeat neither could silence. Her dormant wolf stepped from shadow beside her, sleek, dark, eyes newly bright. When their shoulders touched, electricity surged, and both wolves threw back their heads, releasing a single, silent howl that echoed across the plain. Seraphina woke before dawn, tears cooling on her cheeks, moonlight fading from the window. Her pulse thrummed with quiet certainty. She pressed fingers to the pendant and whispered the only truth that mattered. "He saw me." Seraphina surfaced from sleep at the first tug of dawn, heart pounding as if she'd been running. The dream clung to her lashes, a moon-washed plain, frost glittering like crushed diamonds, and Anthony standing beside a great golden wolf that paced with eyes brighter than starfire. In the dream, she'd reached for him without fear, but the horizon had split apart, dragging them to opposite sides like magnets torn loose. She blinked up at the vaulted ceiling of her suite, breathing hard. The sheets stuck to her skin, damp with sweat though the room was cool. She rolled onto her side and pressed trembling fingers to the hollow of her throat. The pulse there felt hotter than her own blood, a new warmth that hummed like a distant engine. Something inside her answered the thrum. It didn't form words, but it wasn't silence either, more the weighty hush before thunder. She whispered, "Naira," testing the name that had whispered through her dream, and felt the hush ripple with recognition. The room still shimmered with early light, soft gray veils spilling across the windows. She threw back the covers and stood, legs shaky, but strong enough to hold her. When she crossed to the mirror, breath fogged the glass, though no heat source stood nearby. She scrubbed a palm across the misted surface until her reflection cleared. Bruises dotted her collarbone where Theon's fingers had dug in the night before. A faint bite mark lurked beneath concealer. Yet beneath the blemishes, her eyes looked brighter, irises ringed with a silver edge that hadn't been there yesterday. A knock tapped at the adjoining door. "Sarah, may I come in?" Cassandra's voice was low, urgent. "Come." Cassandra slipped inside carrying a tray of coffee and sliced fruit. Her gaze flicked to the fogged mirror. "Windows closed and still steaming? Interesting." "It was like that when I woke," Seraphina lied, wiping a second smear from the glass. "Probably humidity." Cassandra set the tray down and stepped close. "Or your power flickering to life." Seraphina's laugh came out thin. "I have no power." "You survived last night on Raw, Will." Cassandra glanced toward the door. "You're different this morning." Seraphina admitted it in a whisper. "I feel something waking. It's small, but it's there." Cassandra touched her arm gentle. "Hold on to that. Theon's in meetings until noon. Eat, shower, breathe. I'll keep watch." "I dreamed of Anthony," Seraphina said before she could stop herself. "And I wasn't afraid." "He's your mate by every sign that matters," Cassandra answered, tone even. "Fear isn't what bonds create, but Theon will do anything to sever that link." Seraphina picked up a slice of mango and nibbled. Sweetness flooded her dry mouth. "He'll try to bind me again soon. Let's worry about each minute as it comes." Cassandra poured coffee, steam curling between them. "Drink. Then we'll plan." While she ate, tiny anomalies stirred. A candle on the mantel sparked, even though its wick was unlit. A single petal drifted from a vase of lilies and twirled in an invisible eddy of air. Cassandra raised a brow each time but said nothing, just scribbled notes on her digital pad. Mirror fog, air swirl, spontaneous static. Seraphina showered, letting water pound knots from her shoulders. When she toweled off, the bathroom mirror fogged again without steam. She drew a tiny crescent moon in the condensation with her fingertip, then wiped it away before dressing in a simple slate blue dress that hid last night's bruises. She stepped back into the bedroom as Cassandra finished a call. "Theon is delayed with the Timber Guild. You have 2 quiet hours. What will you do with them?" "I'll send security requests for more female staff near your wing. Harder for Theon's bruisers to corner you alone." Cassandra hesitated. "Valen asked to examine your injuries later." "Let him," Seraphina said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "I'm done hiding bruises for Theon's pride." They shared a look that felt like the first stone in a foundation. Cassandra left to liaise with staff. Seraphina wandered to the balcony. Frost rimmed the rail, catching sunlight like fragile lace. She touched the cold metal and felt warmth bloom beneath her palm until a bead of water slid free. She jerked back. The rail steamed where her skin had touched. "Naira?" The thought wasn't quite words, more a pulse of inquiry. The hush stirred in her chest, soft as a sigh. Down in the courtyard, black sedans idled as dignitaries departed. One car bore the Lycan royal crest, a silver wolf head encircled by crescent moons. The sight jolted her. She imagined Anthony inside, golden eyes unreadable, jaw tight with duty. A shiver traced her spine, half yearning, half dread. Miles away in a granite-fronted embassy, Anthony sat at a conference table with Isara and his beta, Dorian. The shaman's violet cloak pooled around her ankles like dusk itself. She poured tea into 3 delicate cups etched with ancient runes, then folded her hands, waiting for Anthony to speak. He stared at the dark liquid, fighting the urge to pace. "Tell me I'm wrong," he said finally. "Tell me what I felt last night was a trick of the goddess." Isara's eyes glimmered like candle flames. "The goddess does not trick. She reveals." Dorian leaned forward, elbows on the table. "We need clarity, Isara. The king hasn't slept. His wolf claws at him." Kalis rumbled agreement inside Anthony's mind. "She bleeds. Bring her here. Keep her safe." Anthony exhaled through his nose. "Every instinct says go to her, but I won't act on instinct alone." Isara sipped tea, then set the cup down. "The woman is your mate. Her wolf is bound, not absent. Trauma locked her spirit in silence. Your presence cracked the seal." Anthony closed his eyes. The memory of Seraphina's speech, quiet but unyielding, flashed behind his lids. "If I press, I become the tyrant she already endures." "Not press," Isara said. "Stand, offer shelter. Wolves come to warmth." "Warmth is not enough against Theon," Anthony replied. He would rather burn the house than see her walk free. Dorian's voice softened. "Then we prepare for ashes and rebuild." Kalis growled approval. Anthony opened his eyes. "What happens if her wolf wakes while tethered to him?" "She will fracture or fight," Isara said. "Better the second, but fighting a bond forged in cruelty takes strength she doesn't yet believe she has. You can lend her that belief." Anthony's fists curled on the table. "How?" Isara smiled faintly. "Ask her if she is safe, and listen when she lies." Anthony met her gaze. "Arrange a private audience, formal. Treaty law gives me that right." Dorian pulled a tablet from his jacket. "I'll deliver the request within the hour." Kalis murmured satisfaction. "Good, close, protect." Anthony lifted his cup but didn't drink. He looked out the tall embassy window toward Bloodthornne's distant towers. "Pray the moon keeps her until I can." Back in Seraphina's suite, Cassandra returned with news. "The Lycan embassy just contacted Theon's office. Anthony demands a private audience tomorrow night." Seraphina's pulse skipped. "Tomorrow." "Treaty law means Theon can't refuse without breaching protocol," Cassandra said. "He'll spin it as business." Seraphina pressed a hand to the balcony rail again. Frost melted in a halo beneath her palm. "What if Theon punishes me before then?" "Then we hold the pieces together until help arrives," Cassandra said firmly. "Vaylin will be here in 30 minutes. I'll stay while he treats you." Seraphina nodded, drawing courage from her attendant's steadiness. They spent the next half hour reviewing schedules, mapping safe corridors, arranging for a second set of eyes whenever Seraphina left her wing. Vaylin arrived with a slim med case and a polite nod to Cassandra. "Alpha's orders were a cursory check, but I brought everything I need for real care if permitted." "Please," Seraphina said, sitting on the edge of the sofa. She unfastened the top button of her dress to expose the fading bite mark. Vaylin's lips compressed. He scanned the wound with a handheld light. "The tissue rejected the intended bond," he murmured. "Rare, but it happens when the soul refuses." Cassandra glanced at Seraphina, who felt a spark of vindication. "Will it scar?" "Superficially, perhaps. Deeper rejection may leave nerve flare, brief flashes of pain, like phantom fire." Vaylin unwrapped a sterile patch and smoothed it over the mark. A cooling numbness spread. "This will soothe." As he worked, he asked gentle questions about dizziness, nausea, muscle spasms. She answered honestly. Cassandra hovered close, arms folded like a guard dog in business attire. Vaylin cleaned bruised knees, applied salve to her knuckles, none of which she'd felt until he touched them. When he finished, he sat back on his heels. "You have remarkable resilience, Lady Voss." "My name is Seraphina," she said quietly. "And resilience is just another word for not dying." Vaylin's gaze warmed with something like respect. Not dying can be a first step to living. He packed his kit, stood, and bowed. I'll log the visit as standard protocol. Get rest. After he left, Cassandra helped Seraphina into a fresh dress and braided her hair into a crown to hide the patch. Noon bells chimed. Heavy steps echoed in the hallway, Theon returning. Seraphina's heartbeat quickened, but for the first time, did not sprint into panic. The door opened. Theon strode in, coat already off, shirt sleeves rolled. His eyes swept the room, landing on Cassandra. Out. Cassandra bristled but dipped her head. As you wish, Alpha. She caught Seraphina's gaze on her way out, silent promise blazing in her eyes. The door shut softly. Theon moved closer, scent sharp as pine smoke. How is my Luna today, he asked, voice wrapped in velvet but stiff with tension. Recovering, Seraphina replied. Your meetings went well? He dropped into an armchair opposite her. They went. Everyone talks about the Lycan King's exit. They think you bewitched him. She folded her hands in her lap, nails pressing crescents into her palms. Do they? Yes, Theon said. If they fear your influence, we use it. He leaned forward. Tomorrow, you will meet him again. Smile, apologize for any misunderstanding, and ensure he knows you belong here. Seraphina's throat tightened. Belong is a strong word. Theon's smile thinned. You sealed that word when you said I do. He stood, turning away as if bored. Rest. Practice your smile. I'll fetch you for supper. He left without touching her, but his presence lingered like smoke. She exhaled shakily. In the quiet, a candle flame on the mantel jumped higher, then steadied. Naira? She closed her eyes. The hush inside stirred, feather light but sure. She didn't force it, just breathed, until the warmth settled into her bones. Cassandra slipped back in minutes later. He's headed to the courtyard. You're clear for half an hour. Seraphina nodded, pulling the pendant from beneath her dress. It glowed faintly in the muted light. She turned it over in her fingers and whispered, The wolf that waits is not lost. The phrase felt like armor sliding into place. That came from Ysara, didn't it? Cassandra asked softly. She's the one who opened the window, Seraphina said. Her lips curved into a small, true smile. Now the wind is coming through. The afternoon haze settled over Bloodthornne Fortress like a heavy lid, stirring memories of summer storms that broke without warning. In the royal embassy 2 miles away, Anthony paced a polished obsidian corridor lined with stained glass windows. Sunshot colors crawled over his black suit with every stride, but he barely noticed. Kalis grumbled in his mind, restless as a caged lion. You move in circles, Kalis said. Go to her. Anthony forced his shoulders back. We do this by law, not impulse. Law left her bruised. The wolf's voice vibrated like iron struck on stone. She tastes of broken things. Let her taste safety. Anthony rounded a corner and entered a small tactical room where Dorian stood at a console, holomaps floating before him. The beta lifted his head. Message delivered. Bloodthornne acknowledged your audience request for tomorrow at 2000 hours, Dorian said. No conditions listed. Theon must be planning a show of cooperation. Anthony folded his arms. Or a trap. Either way, we'll control the space. I'll sweep the chamber myself an hour before. Dorian hesitated. And you, sire? Will you hold the bond in check? You walked out once. The next breach could start a war. Anthony's jaw flexed. She is not a breach to be mended. She's a person to be protected. Kalis let out an approving growl. Dorian gave a faint nod. Ysara plans to accompany us. She'll remain outside. Her presence unsettles Theon. Anthony exhaled. It unsettles me how much that pleases her. Dorian's mouth twitched. She does enjoy shaking thrones. He keyed a final command, closing the map. We drill entry protocols at 1700. Good. Anthony turned to leave, then paused. Thank you, old friend. For what? for believing me when I said the world shifted last night." Dorian's expression softened. "I felt the tremor too, sire." He laid a fist over his heart. "We stand with you." Anthony inclined his head and strode out, Kalis finally falling silent, content with forward motion. Back at Bloodthornne, Seraphina's half-hour of calm ended when a trio of guards arrived to escort her to Theon's private council room. Cassandra walked beside her, tablet in hand, as if notes could shield either of them. "Do you know why he wants me?" Seraphina murmured as they paced marble corridors. "He called an emergency meeting with Ashwood's trade envoy," Cassandra whispered. "My guess, he wants you there to prove you're compliant." They stopped outside oak double doors carved with snarling wolves. The captain of the guard announced them. The doors swung inward. The room smelled of cigars and tension. Theon stood at the head of a long, dark table, flanked by Alaric and 3 suited men bearing Ashwood crests. Papers and digital tablets littered the surface. An empty chair waited at Theon's right, a cushion on the floor beside it. Seraphina's stomach dropped. Theon gestured to the cushion without looking at her. "Kneel by my side." Her pulse hammered. Cassandra started to step forward, but Seraphina caught her wrist with a silent plea. "It will only worsen if you intervene." Cassandra's jaw worked, but she retreated to the back wall. Seraphina moved to the cushion and folded her legs beneath her skirt. Pain flared in bruised knees. She kept her spine straight, refusing to hunch like a scolded child. The Ashwood envoy exchanged glances. Smug, curious, faintly apologetic, she couldn't tell. Theon began outlining trade percentages, his tone smooth. "Bloodthornne will handle shipping logistics. Ashwood provides raw timber. Seraphina will oversee our combined charity wing, ensuring optical goodwill." He rested a hand on her crownless head. The pressure felt like a brand. "One note," said Envoy Herrick, a stout man with shrewd eyes. "Ashwood's council wonders if your Luna's strengths might be better used on diplomatic tours." Her speech last night generated interest. Theon's smile chilled the room. "My wife's strength is here, serving our household. Exposure can be unpredictable." Seraphina bit the inside of her cheek. Heat pulsed in her chest, an echo of Naira bristling. A candle on the sideboard sputtered and flared taller. Herrick's eyes flicked toward the flame. Alaric cleared his throat, diffusing tension with numbers and graphs. Conversation trudged on. Each time Theon emphasized efficiency, his hand tightened in Seraphina's hair. By the 20th slide, her scalp burned. She closed her eyes and reached inward. "Nira, I don't want to break." The hush inside quivered, like a heartbeat against hers. Not yet a voice, more a shared breath. Half an hour later, the meeting adjourned. The envoys filed out, murmuring farewell. When the doors shut, Theon yanked Seraphina to her feet. Pain shot through her knees. "Stand straight," he snapped. "Did you enjoy your display of obedience?" She met his gaze, calm washing over fiery embarrassment. If it served the alliance. His eyes narrowed at her even tone. "We dine with the Ravensthorn delegation tonight. You'll sit, not kneel. I'll decide later if you speak." He brushed a thumb across her lip as if wiping away invisible dirt, then strode out with Alaric. The guards followed. Cassandra hurried forward. "Can you walk?" "Yes." Seraphina straightened her skirt. Blood dotted the fabric at her knees. "I'm fine." That was humiliating, Cassandra muttered, fury sharpening each word. "But I didn't fall." Seraphina flexed her shoulders. "And I didn't cry." They returned to the suite. Valen appeared 10 minutes later with antiseptic and bandages. He knelt, dabbing gently at the raw skin. "He made you kneel again," Valen observed. "Symbolism is his favorite spice," Seraphina said dryly. Valen's lips twitched, almost a smile. "Keep the bandages on until tomorrow." He packed his kit but lingered. "I requested to accompany the audience with the Lycan King. Medical supervision soothes security fears." "Did Theon agree?" Cassandra asked. "He will." Valen's mild voice carried iron. I filed it under Sovereignty Health Protocol. After he left, Seraphina sat at her vanity. Candlelight glimmered on glass. She opened a drawer to find her mother's locket. Leon had allowed her that keepsake, perhaps because sentimental value held no weight in trade deals. She clicked it open. The photo inside was nearly faded to smoke, but the smile was still there. A pang hit her chest. Nyra stirred, soft and sad. A knock sounded. Royal, courier. Cassandra accepted a parchment scroll sealed with silver wax. She unrolled it, eyes widening. It's from the Lycan embassy, addressed to you personally. Seraphina's breath stuttered. She read the flowing script, formal wording, inviting her to discuss philanthropic collaboration before tomorrow night's audience, signed in Anthony's hand. Cassandra stared at her. He bypassed Theon's channels. Maybe a courtesy copy went to Theon, Seraphina said, heart fluttering. Or maybe he's gambling you'll receive it first. Cassandra folded the scroll. We'll hide this until I can gauge Theon's mood. Seraphina pressed the parchment to her chest. Heat passed through paper into skin. The hush stirred deeper, almost forming sound. She closed her eyes. Across the fortress, Theon entered a side office where Alaric waited beside a console. Theon poured whiskey into a tumbler. Do you think she bewitched Herrick? The man kept glancing at her like she was a prize stallion he'd lost in a bet. Alaric answered carefully. She spoke only once to greet them. Perhaps they're unused to seeing an Ashwood daughter obey without question. Theon drank, throat working. Tomorrow I grant an audience because I must. But after that, his wolf Vargos scraped claws inside. She signs the final bond or we find other uses. Royal observers remain, Alaric warned. Move slowly. Theon set his glass down hard. I will move precisely as I choose. He strode out, leaving the whiskey trembling. Evening bled across mauve skies. Seraphina donned a charcoal gown for the Raventhorne dinner. Long sleeves, modest neckline. Cassandra wove her hair into a sleek twist. Bandages hid beneath opaque stockings. Together they walked to the dining hall. Raventhorne's Alpha Chi greeted them, a wiry man with quicksilver eyes. His Luna, Elise, smiled warmly at Seraphina and patted the seat beside her. Theon stiffened, but allowed the placement. Dinner progressed with courses of roasted pheasant, candied beets, and honey-glazed almonds. Elise leaned close, whispering, You handled that kneeling spectacle with grace. Seraphina kept her voice soft. Grace feels heavy sometimes. Weight builds muscle, Elise said, eyes gentle. Even hearts have muscle. Across the table, Theon's gaze tightened at their hushed exchange. He shifted topics to border patrols, drawing Kai's attention. Elise slipped a small note into Seraphina's napkin. When Seraphina unfolded it later in the hall, it read, Raventhorne stands with unions born of respect, not fear. Her fingers trembled, the first outside support that felt personal rather than political. She hid the note in her bodice. After guests left, Theon escorted Seraphina back toward the suite. His hand grazed the small of her back, deceptively gentle. You whispered with Elise. She offered compliments on the charity wing. Seraphina lied. She's nosy, he muttered. At her door he paused. Remember what obedience earns. He traced her jaw. Tomorrow, perfect composure. Yes, Alpha, she said, voice steady. Inside, Cassandra closed the door, sagging. He didn't search you. I won't let fear steal every breath, Seraphina murmured. She removed the Raventhorne note, placing it beside Isara's candle message. 2 sparks of hope. Night deepened. Cassandra retired to the chaise. Seraphina sat on the windowsill, pendant warmed between her palms. Clouds drifted across the moon, silver edging black. She thought of Anthony, of Kalis prowling at the back of his mind, of Isara's calm certainty. She thought of Elise's note, of Valen's quiet courage, of Cassandra's unwavering loyalty. Threads wove around her heart, forming something like armor. Nira's presence fluttered, timid but there. Seraphina whispered, "I'm still here. We're still here." The candle flame jumped, bending toward her. She smiled. Down in the guard station, Theon reviewed surveillance feeds. He paused on an image. Seraphina at the window, head bowed over something glowing at her chest. Fury and fear mingled in his gut. Vargos hissed, "She hides secrets. Tear them out." Soon, Theon promised, fingers whitening on the console edge. Soon she will have no secrets left. Part 3. 2,110 words. Morning light crept over the city in dull sheets of pewter. Seraphina woke from an uneasy doze on the chaise. She had fallen asleep there after hours at the window, pendant clutched in her palm. Cassandra, already dressed, bent to stir the fire. Blue smoke rose and thinned into nothing. "You should use the bed," Cassandra said in a hushed voice. "It's warmer." It felt wrong lying in silk while he roams the halls. Seraphina stood and winced as bruised knees protested. "What time is it?" 6. "I wanted you up before Theon's trainers arrive." Cassandra pressed a mug of ginger tea into her hands. "He scheduled etiquette drills, then voice lessons to improve clarity. He doesn't know your throat's already clear enough to cut glass." Seraphina managed a faint smile. "Then I'll whisper. Let him think he's the teacher." Steam warmed her face. She sipped, ginger heat chasing away last night's chill. Nira stirred at the first swallow, a sleepy ripple of acknowledgement. "Good morning," Seraphina murmured inside. She felt, not heard, a nuzzle of fur, a shy greeting. Cassandra glanced at her. "Did you say something?" "Just greeting the day." Seraphina set the mug on the sill. She opened the locket at her throat. The faded photograph caught a shard of sunrise, flashing pale gold. The tiny hinge felt sturdier today, as if memory alone strengthened metal. A knock. 2 guards stepped in, escorting a severe-looking tutor in dove gray. "Lady Voss," the woman said crisply. "Language refinement. Alpha's orders." She gestured to a stack of narrow books. Modern etiquette, speech cadence charts, a script for formal diplomacy. Seraphina lowered onto a sofa. She recited vowel sounds, practiced polite greetings, all while her mind drifted to the night ahead. Each time the tutor corrected her posture, she imagined Anthony's eyes, steady and intent, and found composure without effort. The bond tugged like a soft thread, reminding her she wasn't alone in this storm. Mid-morning, Theon strode in without warning. He listened to a few lines, then dismissed the tutor with a wave. "Enough lessons. I want to walk. Under guard. You need fresh air before meeting royalty." His gaze landed on Cassandra. "You carry her cloak." Outside, the fortress grounds glittered with frost. Theon guided Seraphina along a gravel path between trimmed hedges. Guards trailed at a respectful distance. Air stabbed her lungs with cold clarity, but it also sharpened her awareness. Birds rustled in bare branches, their tiny heartbeats loud to her new senses. Theon's hand curled around her elbow. "You will stay silent tonight unless spoken to first." "Treaty audiences allow free exchange," Seraphina replied. "The protocols—" "I write protocols," he cut in. "If I signal, you laugh. If I squeeze your hand, you praise the alliance. Understood?" She stared ahead at a statue of an ancient Alpha King, sword raised skyward. "Yes, Alpha." They rounded a corner to find Valen kneeling beside a greenhouse door, scanning plants with a handheld analyzer. He stood and bowed. "Morning, Alpha, Lady Voss." His gaze flicked to her knees beneath the cloak. "Your bandages need changing midday." Theon frowned. "She's fine." "Risk of infection isn't fine," Valen said mildly. "I'll return at 1300. He walked off toward the clinic wing, leaving air crisp with the scent of menthol. Theon resumed their stroll but kept silent. When they reached the courtyard arch, he stopped. "After tonight, the king will realize you belong to me. The gossip ends." He dipped his head, touching lips to the mark on her neck through fabric. An act more like branding than affection. Nyra recoiled. Seraphina swallowed bile. Back in the suite, Cassandra helped her change bandages. "You're shaking." "Not from fear," Seraphina said, voice hoarse. "From disgust." Cassandra smoothed ointment over raw skin. "Hold on. Evening will come." The day crawled. Voice drills, posture corrections, a half hour on the treadmill to keep her figure regal. Each order Theon barked, she obeyed. Each time he turned away, she whispered Nyra's name. The hush warmed, as if a presence inside her pressed against invisible bars, testing their strength. At 1600, Valen returned with Cassandra. He cleaned the bite wound, replaced her knee bandages, and handed her 2 small vials. "One is lavender oil for nerves," he said. "The other is blank, no drug. But if Theon tries to force a suppressant tonight, swap the syringes. The nozzle fits either vial." Seraphina met the doctor's eyes, gratitude swelling. "Why?" "Because medicine heals, it shouldn't chain." He packed his kit and left before emotion could crack his calm. Dusk bled red across the sky. Servants delivered an ivory gown trimmed in midnight blue velvet, the Lycan royal colors. Theon insisted she wear it for visual diplomacy. Cassandra laced the back, hands deft. The dress hugged Seraphina's figure but allowed movement. Sleeves flared at the wrists like petals. A silver comb anchored her hair, leaving the nape bare to disguise the patch. "You look like a queen," Cassandra whispered. "I feel like a fuse." Seraphina exhaled. "If I break tonight..." "You won't?" Cassandra slipped Izara's tiny pendant into the hidden pocket at the dress seam. "Take warmth with you." Guards escorted them through lamplit corridors to a moonlit antechamber near the embassy bridge. Royal sentries waited, armor black with silver pauldrons, helms etched with crescent moons. One stepped forward. "His Majesty asks that only Lady Voss enter." The guard's voice resonated through the visor, respectful but firm. Theon stiffened. "I remain." "The treaty allows 1 private interval," the guard replied. 10 minutes, then you may join." He tilted his head. "Refusal breaches royal protocol." Alaric murmured something to Theon, likely caution. Theon ground his teeth. 10 minutes. I wait outside." His fingers dug into Seraphina's elbow a final time, then released. The doors opened. She stepped into a small, octagonal chamber glazed with moonlight through a skylight of frosted glass. Candles glimmered in low niches. Anthony stood alone, at the center, black suit fitted like second skin. Golden eyes, storm quiet. Time slowed. The door shut behind her, muffling guard steps. She forced herself forward until they stood an arm's length apart. "Thank you for meeting me," Anthony said, voice low, rough at the edges like stone rasped by wind. "I had no choice," she answered honestly. "I'm sorry for that." His gaze swept her face, lingering on the faint bruise near her temple. His nostrils flared, catching the scent of healing balm. Anger flickered behind gold irises, quickly leashed. Seraphina clasped her hands to hide their tremor. "We have..." Her throat closed on the word connection. "A complication. Theon grows suspicious." "He should be more than suspicious," Anthony muttered. Kalis pressed at his mind. Smell the fear on her. Hunt the one who made it. Anthony inhaled, steadying. "Are you safe?" The question cracked something in her. She wanted to say yes, to keep Cassandra out of danger, to keep Valen's kindness secret. But truth glimmered in Anthony's gaze, an unspoken promise that lies would shatter in his hands. "I survive," she whispered. "Survival isn't safety." He took a half step closer, careful. Heat radiated off him. The bond thrummed like a plucked string, higher, tighter, aching. She lifted her eyes. "If you act, war follows." "If I don't act, he will break you." His jaw worked. "I see fractures already." "I'm stronger than he knows." As she said it, Nyra stirred, pushing warmth to her fingertips. Candles around the room flickered higher, then settled. Anthony's eyes tracked the flames. "I keep feeling you," he confessed, voice raw. "Even miles away. Kayla's claws to reach you." "Naira." She caught the name before it escaped, but saw recognition flare in his eyes. "Your wolf," he breathed. "She's been silent since childhood." Her voice caught. "Now she's waking, and I don't know how to help her." Let her feel a world where pain isn't the only language. He lifted a hand, but didn't touch. "May I?" Breath trembling, she nodded. His fingers brushed her cheek, feather light. A shock of warmth flooded her, not fire, but sunlight through leaves. Kalis rumbled contentment. Nira pressed forward, nose to cold glass. Yearning. Her knees threatened to buckle under the tidal pull. Anthony steadied her with a hand at her elbow, distance evaporating. His heartbeat thundered against her own. For a breath they simply existed, bond humming between them. A lifeline too bright to stare at. Footsteps outside broke the spell. Anthony exhaled, stepping back. 10 minutes nearly gone. He reached into his coat, produced a slim envelope. Inside are emergency clauses and a contact beacon. If you feel unsafe, press the feather. Silver, palm size. Will come. If he finds it, he won't. Anthony's gaze hardened. I know how he watches. We hid it from him already. She accepted the envelope, tucking it into the pocket with the pendant. Their fingers brushed. An accidental, electric spark. She wondered if he felt her tremor. She saw his. Kalis murmured, "Soon. Hold her." Naira answered, a single brush of fur, tentative but real. The door opened. Theon strode in, guards flanking. His eyes snapped to Anthony's hand hovering near Seraphina's. Jaw clenched, he forced a smile. "Your Majesty," he said, "I trust my Luna was helpful." "Most." Anthony's voice was smooth steel. "We shared philanthropic ideas. She's insightful." "She reflects my guidance," Theon replied, slipping an arm around her waist. His thumb pressed where bruise met bone. "Time to return." Seraphina kept her face serene, though pain flared. Anthony's gaze flicked to the grip, expression chilling like water over coals. "Take care," he said to Seraphina, meaning layered beneath courtesy. She dipped her head. "Thank you for your time." Theon steered her out, guards closing ranks. Anthony remained in the chamber, fists tight at his sides, pulse pounding. When the doors shut, Kalis roared within. "Chains on her. Gold for us." "Break them." "We will." Anthony vowed. "Soon." Down the corridor, Theon guided Seraphina toward a private elevator. As soon as doors slid closed, he slammed the stop button. The lift jolted. "What did he give you?" His voice thrummed with barely checked fury. "Advice," she said, pulse racing. "And he touched you." Theon crowded her against mirrored wall. "Did you like it?" She met his eyes, channeling Naira's emerging strength. "I endured as I always do." He snarled and shoved her shoulder. Pain radiated. Before he could strike again, the lift shuddered and resumed, summoned by external override, the Royal Observer's safety protocol. Doors opened on the main hall where guards and staff bustled. Theon forced a veneer of calm, releasing her arm. "Return to your suite," he hissed. "We'll discuss obedience later." Seraphina walked away, head high, pendant and envelope layered over her heart. Cassandra waited by her door, eyes scanning bruises that bloomed fresh on her skin. "Did he hurt you?" Cassandra whispered once inside. "Not enough to matter." Seraphina's voice shook only a little. She pressed the envelope into Cassandra's hands. "Hide this." Cassandra nodded, tucking it beneath a loose floorboard they'd discovered weeks ago. "What did the king say?" "That I deserve more than survival." Seraphina touched the silver comb, pulse still humming with his warmth. "I almost believed him." Night seeped into corners. Guards rotated. Theon prowled his office, plotting ceremonies, oaths, punishments. In her suite, Seraphina sat before the mirror. She placed Isara's wax message and Raventhorn's note side by side, then added Anthony's envelope, a small stack of rebellions. She lit a single candle. The flame leapt unusually high, steady as a spear. She lowered her gaze to her reflection. For the first time, the silver rim around her irises glowed unmistakably, a ring of moonlit steel. Nyra stirred, more distinct, a shape in shadow. "Are you there?" Seraphina whispered aloud. Her breath shook the candle. Inside, a murmur, almost a voice but not yet formed. "Wait," Nyra seemed to say. "Soon." Night pressed in with the closeness of a sealed box. Hours after her meeting with Anthony, Seraphina sat at the small table in her suite, tracing the carved words in candle wax. "The wolf that waits is not lost," while Cassandra dozed on the chaise. The pendant warmed steadily against her skin, steady as a heartbeat. She tried to read the charity ledgers in front of her, but numbers slid from focus. Every sense still vibrated with the echo of Anthony's touch. A knock too harsh for any attendant jolted her upright. Cassandra snapped awake. Before either could move, Theon entered with 2 guards at his back. Shadow bruised the planes of his face. Anger clung to him like burnt oil. "Leave us," he told the guards. They hesitated. Royal observer policy required line of sight after incidents, but Theon's eyes promised consequences. They withdrew to the hall, door closing with a soft click. Seraphina rose slowly. "It's late." He stalked closer, eyes green fire. "Luna vows happen at dawn, but I can't wait." He held up a syringe. Valen brewed nerve-calming tonic. 1 dose, and you'll stop shaking under my hand. Cassandra moved between them. "Alpha Medical Administration requires a witness." "Get out," Theon snarled. Seraphina stepped around Cassandra, voice calm. "I'll comply if you dismiss her without harm." Cassandra's gaze locked on hers. "Are you sure?" But Seraphina gave the slightest nod. The attendant backed toward the door, tension coiled in every line of her body. When the latch clicked, Theon gripped Seraphina's arm, hauling her toward the bed. Moonlight spilled across sheets, turning everything ghost pale. He pressed the syringe cap between his teeth, tossing it aside. "Hold still." She drew in a breath, Nyra stirring with sudden clarity. "Wait," the wolf whispered, a shape taking form behind her ribs. Theon's hand closed on her shoulder, tilting her head to bear the fated bite. She felt the needle touch skin. In one swift motion, taught by countless childhood punishments, she twisted, grabbing his wrist. The syringe flew clinking harmlessly across hardwood. His surprise flared into rage. "Ungrateful wretch," he backhanded her. Light burst behind her eyes. She tasted copper. She stumbled but didn't fall. Blood trickled from her lip, warm and salty. He reached again. This time she didn't step back. Something expanded inside her. Heat, resolve. A presence at her side, though she stood alone. "No," she said, voice low, resonant in a way that felt not entirely her own. The candle flame behind her surged tall, casting their shadows like towering beasts on the wall. Theon hesitated, thrown by the change in her tone. Vargos bristled inside him, snarling, "Go on, claim." He lunged, teeth bared, aiming for her throat. She pivoted. Theon's bite landed on the curve of her shoulder, tearing silk. Pain flared. But instead of the bond's familiar burn, icy rejection flooded the wound. The mark fizzled, refusing to seal. Theon jerked back, lips stained red. "What is this?" he gasped. Seraphina pressed a hand to the bleeding punctures. A cool rush flowed outward, knitting flesh. She watched in numb awe as the blood stopped almost instantly. Nyra was there, closer than breath, pouring calm strength through every vein. Theon's eyes widened. Witchcraft. He struck her again, fist connecting with ribs still tender from bruises. Air fled her lungs, but she stayed upright, gripping the bedpost. Silk ripped further, shoulder bare, bite fading to nothing but pink skin. Footsteps pounded. The door burst open. Guards skidded in, followed by Valen, his coat half-buttoned, Cassandra right behind him. A royal observer blocked hallway traffic, one hand on a comm piece. Valen's eyes took in the scene, the syringe on the floor, blood on Theon's teeth, Seraphina's torn dress, and his face drained of color. "Alpha, stand down." "This is private," Theon snarled. "Not anymore, King," Valen said. "Royal protocol states any forced bonding attempt must be witnessed." Cassandra rushed to Seraphina's side, arm slipping around her waist. "You're bleeding." "Not anymore," Seraphina whispered. The wound had closed. Even Valen's gaze flicked to the patch of unbroken skin, astonished. Theon shook with fury. "She's bewitched, drug her." Valen bent to retrieve the syringe, thumbed the plunger. Clear liquid beaded at the tip. He met Seraphina's eyes. Silent question. She shook her head minutely. Valen straightened. "The tonic spoiled on impact, Alpha. I'll prepare a fresh vial tomorrow." Theon's nostrils flared. He turned to the royal observer. "This is domestic. Leave." The observer remained. "I've signaled the embassy. The Lycan King will be informed." Theon froze. For the first time, Seraphina saw fear cut through his rage. He spun on Valen. "Clean her up. Not a bruise visible by sunrise." He stormed out, guards scrambling after. As the door slammed, Seraphina sagged into Cassandra. Valen approached with a dermal patch. "Analgesic?" Later. Her voice trembled but steadied. "Please report everything." "Already writing," Valen said, stylus tapping glass. "Medical, legal, moral." Cassandra guided Seraphina to the bathroom, closing the door. Steam hissed as she drew warm water into a basin. Seraphina sat on the closed toilet lid, mind spinning. "You stopped him." Cassandra breathed, dabbing at dried blood near Seraphina's lip. "How?" "I didn't." Seraphina lifted her eyes, silver rims gleaming. "We did." Cassandra's hand stilled. "Nira." A small, fierce smile tugged Seraphina's mouth. She said one word. "What?" "Fight." The moment she spoke it, warmth flooded her chest, expanding until tears blurred her vision. For the first time in years, the silence inside cracked open, and she felt herself, no, themselves, standing. Outside, a rumble shook the walls, engines revving at the front portico. Cassandra peeked through slatted blinds. Black embassy SUVs barreled down the driveway, Lycan crest gleaming in headlight glare. "Anthony," she whispered. Seraphina rose, wrapping the cloak around torn silk. "He comes because Theon's report will twist the truth." The suite door opened, Valen entered. Embassy envoy en route to the oubliette chamber. Theon's heading there to control narrative. Cassandra grabbed spare shoes, thrust them at Seraphina. "Go with Valen. I'll tail Theon." Seraphina nodded, adrenaline blazing. Valen led her through service corridors, smelling of starch and citrus. They emerged behind a tapestry near the fortress's great stair. Voices echoed ahead. Theon's harsh, Alaric's measured attempts at calm. Down the grand hall, double doors parted for Anthony. He strode inside, cloak flowing like wildfire's shadow. Guards scrambled to bow. His gaze locked on Seraphina the instant she stepped from hiding. Fury and relief mingled on his face. He closed the distance in 4 long strides. What did he do? She met those gold eyes without flinching. Nothing that will last. Anthony's chest rose, anger leashed tight. Kalis pressed forward. "Ours stands." Valen cleared his throat. "Medical report ready, Your Majesty." He handed over a tablet. Anthony scanned the data. Attempted forced bond, bite rejection, healed trauma, jaw ticking. He raised his head. "Alpha Theon, explain." Theon spread his hands. "A misunderstanding." She stumbled. I steadied. "Your teeth steadied her?" Anthony's voice held frost. Royal law forbids coercion. You violated it. Guards shifted, tension electric. Alaric stepped in. With respect, perhaps private mediation. No mediation, Anthony said. I invoke sanctuary review. Until the council rules, the Luna resides under royal protection. Gasps rippled, Theon's eyes blazed. You can't. Watch me. Anthony turned to Seraphina. Do you accept sanctuary? She hesitated only a heartbeat, then nodded. Yes. Kalis roared approval. Nyra pushed forward, embers catching. Seraphina felt the bond tighten like a safety line thrown across a chasm. Royal guards formed around her. Cassandra broke through the crowd, breathless. I'm her aide. Then come, Anthony said. He offered his arm to Seraphina, not a claim, but an escort. She took it, trembling with adrenaline. When his hand closed over hers, calm settled like snowfall. They moved toward the doors. Theon lunged. If she crosses that threshold, war... Anthony pivoted, eyes glowing molten. Choose your next action carefully. The moon witnesses. Vargo snarled inside Theon, thirsting for challenge, but Alaric gripped his alpha's arm, whispering. After a beat, Theon stepped back. Seraphina walked beside Anthony through storm-lit halls, every step a thunderclap in her blood. Outside, cold air slapped her face, waking every nerve. Convoy doors opened. She climbed in, Cassandra at her side, Valen following. As the SUV pulled away, fortress lights receded like a nightmare at sunrise. Seraphina pressed her forehead to the cool window. Nyra curled inside her, no longer shadows but ember glow, whispering wordless solace. Anthony's voice came softly from the opposite seat. We'll take you somewhere safe. Safe. She tasted the word, unfamiliar, yet sweet. She turned to look at him. Thank you. He inclined his head, silence filled with unspoken vows. Outside, the horizon blushed with the first hint of dawn. Seraphina closed her eyes. In the hush, Nyra spoke again. One word, strong as steel, warm as rising light. Fight. Seraphina's lips curved. Yes, she breathed. We fight. Dawn poured over the mountain range like liquid gold when the convoy crested the final ridge. Seraphina leaned toward the window, forehead nearly touching glass, as the Lycan palace revealed itself. Terraced stone walls clinging to a cliffside, spires carved from pale granite, banners snapping in alpine wind. Behind it rose peaks dusted in snow, their jagged crowns sliced clean against a sky so blue it looked newborn. Cold air seeped through the cracked window vent, carrying pine and something purer. Freedom, Nyra whispered inside her, the word rippling across Seraphina's bones like warm water over ice. The SUV slowed, tires crunching on gravel. Cassandra sat opposite, eyes bright with fatigue and cautious hope. She reached out, squeezing Seraphina's gloved fingers. We made it, she murmured, voice raw after a sleepless journey. No walls, no watchers with collars, just sky. Seraphina swallowed against a lump in her throat. Sky looks bigger than I remember. She shifted, fabric rustling, a simple wool dress in royal blue, chosen for comfort rather than display. Her shoulder still ached now and then where Theon's failed bite had pierced her, but the wound remained a faint patch of pink courtesy of Valen's careful salve and Nyra's surprising speed at knitting flesh. Beneath the dress, the pendant Isara had given her rested over her heart, faintly warm. Outside, royal guards in black and silver lined the open courtyard. They didn't draw weapons, didn't glare. Instead, they bowed as the doors opened. Anthony stepped from the lead vehicle, cloak sweeping behind him, gold eyes scanning for threats. He paused when he saw her, and even from 3 car lengths away, she felt the shift in the air. Subtle, magnetic. Kalis rumbled a greeting deep in his chest. Nyra answered with a soft, curious hum. Anthony didn't stride to her door, didn't scoop her into a dramatic embrace. He merely nodded to the guard at her side, granting silent permission. The gesture said everything. She would step out when ready, on her own feet. She inhaled the crisp morning, then opened the SUV door herself. Mountain air struck her lungs, pure, cold, electrifying. She stepped onto flagstones that radiated leftover warmth from days when the sun sat high over these heights. Her legs wobbled from hours of travel, yet held steady. Guards inclined heads in respect. A few offered gentle smiles, more welcoming than the stiff deference she'd known at Bloodthornne. Cassandra emerged behind her and drew the cloak around Seraphina's shoulders, fastening the clasp. Anthony approached at a measured pace, cloak fluttering against dark trousers. He offered no touch, only presence. "Welcome to Lycan Peak," he said, voice low enough only she and Cassandra could hear. "You are under my roof, but, more importantly, beyond his reach." Seraphina's breath formed a white cloud. "Thank you for bringing me here." "Thank you," Nira echoed inside, her tone shy but steady. Anthony's gaze flicked across Seraphina's expression, perhaps sensing the echo of that internal voice. His own wolf stirred, a warm pulse at the edge of her awareness, and Kayla spoke in a rumble only Anthony could hear. Yet Seraphina caught the sentiment, a wash of protective reassurance that spilled over the bond like sun spilling through leaves. Anthony gestured toward the main entrance, carved doors banded with silver moons. "Isara has arranged rooms for you both in the East Wing. No obligations today. Rest. Explore if you wish. Guards will escort you only if you ask." Seraphina lifted her chin, scanning ramparts and balconies. She saw archers, but their stances were relaxed, bows unstrung. The quiet clicked inside her mind. No hidden desperation, no sense of being prey. She felt Nira test the air, sniffing silent scents, pine resin, melting snow, wildflowers unseen. Cassandra cleared her throat lightly. "I'm grateful as well, Your Majesty. We'll take that rest." Her fingers tightened around a leather folio that contained letters of testimony and council signatures, insurance if Theon attempted more manipulations. Anthony nodded. To Seraphina alone, he added, "If you need me, ask any guard for the North Library. I'll be there." Then he stepped aside, letting them choose their path. Two female guards, one tall with silver-streaked hair, the other shorter with kind hazel eyes, waited by the doors. The taller introduced herself as Captain Thalia. "We'll escort you to your suite, Lady Seraphina, Lady Cassandra. After that, your time is yours." Lady. The word felt less like a chain than before, carrying respect, not requirement. Seraphina followed Captain Thalia through echoing halls. Sunstone tiles gleamed underfoot, and floor-to-ceiling windows framed vast drops into forested valleys. Where Bloodthornne's corridors had reeked of sterilized fear, Lycan Peak smelled of cedar fires and beeswax polish. Cassandra whispered, "Your posture's different, you're not hugging your arms." Seraphina glanced down, her shoulders sat relaxed instead of hunched. "Feels like I finally grew to my bones." Nira purred agreement, brushing the thought with warmth. Seraphina nearly smiled aloud. They reached a suite of interlocking rooms, sitting chamber, bedroom with balcony, private bath, scented faintly of lavender. Sun flooded everything, turning woven tapestries into portraits of light. Cassandra exhaled an appreciative, "Oh," setting her folio on a low table. Captain Thalia bowed and retreated. As soon as the door closed, Seraphina crossed to the balcony. The balustrade overlooked a plunging gorge where a river glittered, threading through pines. Wind lifted her hair. Her lungs expanded fully for the first time she could remember. She closed her eyes and let her mind slip beyond her body, listening inward. "Nira?" The answer came not in word but sensation. Paws stretching on moss, a deep inhale of cold sky, a little bound of joy that made Seraphina's lips curve. "We're safe," she whispered. The wolf's response, "Safe, yes. Healing now." Inside, Cassandra rummaged drawers, finding a pot of mountain honey and oat biscuits. She carried them to the balcony. "Eat." Valen said real food helps blood rebuild. Seraphina accepted a biscuit, honey clinging to her finger. He was brave, standing to Theon. We were all brave. Cassandra bit into hers, crumbs dusting her scarf. But you did something I've never seen anyone do. You said no. Her eyes shimmered. I never got to say no. Seraphina's chest tightened. She set her biscuit down and pulled Cassandra into a gentle embrace. You're free to say it now, to anyone. Starting with myself, Cassandra murmured against her shoulder. They drew apart, sharing a fragile laugh. A knock came, soft, respectful. Captain Thalia returned with a footman bearing trays, herbal teas, fruit, 2 sealed letters. From Shaman Isara, Thalia explained. She asks you read them after you rest. When they were alone again, Seraphina broke the wax on the first envelope. Inside lay neat script, * rest. Tonight the moon will rise for you. Drink the blue vial before dusk. She looked up at Cassandra. Vial? The footman had left a small crystal bottle on the tray, water inside shimmering with faint lunar opalescence. Cassandra sniffed the cork. Smells like starlight, if that had a scent. She blinked. I need sleep. Seraphina guided her friend to the bedroom's second bed. Cassandra kicked off shoes and slid beneath quilts, out in minutes. Seraphina changed into soft linen sleepwear and curled in an armchair by the balcony doors. Exhaustion dropped like a heavy cloak. She drifted. Dreams came. Nyra trotting through moonlit snow, ears perked, Kaelus's distant golden silhouette on a ridge, Anthony's voice, I will wait. The dream fractured, and Seraphina stood in a room of mirrors. Each pane showed her at different ages. Child with wrists bruised, teenager with hollow eyes, young woman kneeling. She reached to touch the glass. Mirrors dissolved into silver dust, revealing a doorway. Nyra waited on the threshold, chains falling from her shoulders like broken vines. The wolf bowed her head, then stepped through, and Seraphina followed. She woke near dusk to soft bells chiming. Lavender twilight-edged sky outside. Cassandra still slept, breathing even. Seraphina reached for the vial, removing the cork. The elixir glowed faintly, reflecting the first evening star. Nyra lifted inside her, urging. She drank. Coolness slid down her throat, then warmth blossomed in every limb, as if tiny lanterns ignited in her blood. A soft rap sounded. Isara entered, violet cloak whispering. Her smile was the mountain at dawn, serene, unstoppable. Rise when ready. Seraphina stood feeling taller. What is happening? Just a walk beneath the moon. Isara's gaze flicked to Cassandra. Your friend rests. Guards will stay. Seraphina followed Isara through hushed corridors, out onto a stone path winding into a garden. Lanterns hung among pines, casting gentle halos on snow-dusted grass. In a clearing, Anthony waited beside an ancient fountain where water shimmered like stars trapped in stone. He looked up and his breath caught. Seraphina felt it through the bond, a warm jolt of awe mirrored by Nyra's pleased rumble. Anthony bowed his head slightly. Good evening. Evening, she replied, stepping under the lantern glow. The elixir's warmth steadied nerves that once would have quaked. Isara said moonlight would help. It does, Isara said, settling on a bench. I'll watch from here. The rest is yours. Anthony offered his arm, eyes asking permission. Seraphina took it, fingers curling against cool wool. They walked slow circles around the fountain, silence thick but comforting. Above, the moon climbed, round and gentle. After the third lap, Anthony spoke. I told myself I would not force a single step, yet each day my heart begs to run toward you. She looked up. And each day you wait anyway. I would wait a lifetime if it gave you peace. Kaelus rumbled. A lifetime is short beside eternity with her. Nyra brushed back. agreement tinged with curiosity. Seraphina stopped beside a stone arch threaded with winter vines. She met Anthony's gaze. I used to think choice was a story told to weaker souls so they'd stop fighting. What do you think now? Choice is strength. She lifted his hand, turning it palm up. I'm afraid. But I'm also ready to live. And I'm done letting fear speak louder than my own voice. Anthony's throat bobbed. What do you choose? She laced their fingers. A future built on respect. And if respect allows love, then I choose love with you. Heat surged through the bond, silver threads weaving tighter. Kalis exhaled a soft growl of relief. Naira pressed joy to Seraphina's heart, wordless, but clear. Anthony's voice roughened. Tell me what you need. Only patience, she whispered. But may I touch your heart first? She placed his hand over her chest, above the pendant. He mirrored the gesture, setting her palm against his steady heartbeat. The bond flared, warm, bright, engulfing yet gentle. Time slowed, lanterns dimmed, replaced by a silvery glow rising from their clasped hands. She heard Nira's voice, strong and sure. Home. Kalis answered. Mine and ours. Seraphina drew a trembling breath. I want this, she said. Anthony's eyes closed, lashes trembling. Then it will be done. He tilted her chin, pressing a kiss to her forehead, then her cheek, lingering to let her pull away if she chose. She didn't. When his lips finally brushed hers, Naira howled, a note of pure, soaring triumph echoed by Kalis's deep thunder. Seraphina opened under the kiss like night-blooming jasmine, inhaling trust. They parted, breaths mingling. Anthony's canines elongated just slightly, but he waited. She bared the curve of her neck. Moonlight painted the skin silver. His voice shook. Last chance to stop me. No stopping, she said, heart steady and wild at once. Only beginning. He bit gently, pain sharp, then sweet. The mark burned, not with rejection, but welcome. Heat spiraling through her veins, merging with the lantern light warmth already ignited. She gasped. He sealed the wound with a soft lick. Silver light pulsed around them, bathing fountain, vines, snow. Naira howled in her mind, a sound so glorious Seraphina's knees buckled. Anthony held her, forehead pressed to hers. Kalis's joyous roar filled the bond. Energy swirled, then settled. No ropes, no chains, just connection. They stood in silence until lanterns glowed ordinary again and the moon shone gently overhead. Izara approached, eyes bright. It is done properly, she murmured. Seraphina felt the truth. No fear coiled in her chest, only a steady flame of belonging. She touched the fresh mark. It radiated warmth. Anthony's thumb wiped a tear from her cheek. Welcome home. She smiled, voice steady. Thank you for waiting. The next morning, mountain sunlight streamed across Seraphina's sheets, coaxing her awake with gentle warmth instead of fear's sharp prod. Cassandra had already opened the balcony doors. Crisp air carried scents of pine and fresh bread from the kitchens below. Seraphina stretched, a pleasant ache spreading through muscles that felt newly hers. Naira stirred, content, then curled at the edge of her consciousness like a cat basking. A tap on the door preceded Captain Thalia's entry. Message from the Royal Council, my lady, she said, offering a gilded scroll. They convene at midday to review Bloodthornne's accusations. Cassandra appeared behind Thalia, holding a tray of porridge berries and steaming tea. Rumor says Theon's petition reads like a child's tantrum, she murmured once Thalia left. Seraphina unfurled the scroll. Council summons requested her testimony and any evidence regarding Bloodthornne's treatment. Her pulse stayed calm. The new bond lent a steady courage. He will lose, she said, surprising herself, with the certainty in her voice. Naira agreed, tail thumping, good riddance. Anthony joined them an hour later, eyes still soft with last night's memory. He greeted Cassandra with a nod. Council chambers are open. Will you testify? Seraphina glanced at Cassandra. Will you stand with me? Until the world ends, Cassandra answered, chin lifting. Anthony extended his arm to Seraphina. Their wolves brushed minds the instant her fingers touched his sleeve, reassuring warmth flowing both ways. Together they walked to the council hall, a circular chamber of white stone, sunlight pouring through an oculus overhead. Elder Lycans filled tiered benches, murmurs hushed at their entrance. Isara waited near a crystal podium, Valen beside her holding a slim projector. Papers, recordings, and sworn statements were ready. Seraphina took her place, heart steady. The first elder, hair silver as first frost, spoke. Lady Seraphina, you were bonded by ceremony to Alpha Theon but claim coercion. Do you stand by this? I do, she said, voice resonating clear. There was no consent for the mate bond. His attempt failed, as wounds show. She indicated the faint mark, edges already a healthy pink. Valen projected medical scans, images of rejected bites, bruised tissue, suppressed healing signatures. Gasps rippled through seats. Another elder asked, did Bloodthornne leadership witness or condone abuse? Cassandra stepped forward. I served Lady Seraphina for 2 years. I witnessed kneelings, beatings, forced starvation periods. Guards threatened staff into silence. These letters, she held the folio, contain signed affirmations from 8 witnesses. Elders examined holographic signatures. Murmurs hardened into outrage. A final piece of evidence, a covert recording Valen had triggered during the syringe incident, played. Theon's voice snarled, drug her. I'll make her submit. The hall fell into shocked silence broken only by Anthony's low growl, echoed faintly by Kalis. The Elder Council conferred in whispers, then spoke. Theon of Bloodthornne violated bond law and sovereign treaty. His authority is suspended pending formal arrest. The Luna is freed. Relief unfurled like a banner in Seraphina's chest. Nyra howled approval, a mental echo filling her ears with triumph. Anthony squeezed her fingers, pride and protectiveness radiating through the bond. But freedom rarely ended cleanly. That evening, thunder rolled beyond clear skies. Distant, rhythmic, wrong. A junior guard sprinted into the strategy room where Anthony and Seraphina consulted maps. Bloodthornne forces approached the southern border, she panted. Unmarked transports. Theon leads. Show me, Anthony said, following her to the watch balcony. Far below, a serpentine road clung to the mountainside. Dust plumes traced 3 armored trucks flanked by motorbikes. At their head rode Theon, cloak snapping, eyes feral. Kalis bristled inside Anthony. He comes spiteful, not brave. Seraphina's breath caught. Nyra's hackles lifted. He's risking war. Anthony turned to Captain Thalia. Deploy guard line at boundary. Non-lethal stance unless attacked. Cassandra, secure civilians. He met Seraphina's gaze. You can watch from the parapet or remain inside. I face him, she said, voice calm. Nyra says fear gives him power. Minutes later, they rode out on horseback. Anthony in light armor, Seraphina in a fur-lined cloak, Captain Thalia and a dozen guards at their backs. Wind cut icy along the ridge. Theon's convoy halted at the stone marker that divided royal lands from free territory. He dismounted, arrogance radiating even through exhaustion. Return my Luna, he shouted across the divide. You stole her. Bloodthornne demands restitution. Anthony reined in his stallion. The council removed your claim, stand down. Theon barked a laugh. Council of sycophants, I take back what's mine. Seraphina nudged her mare forward until she stood level with Anthony. I was never yours, she said, projecting across the cold air. Her voice carried steady, filled with something bright and unbreakable. Theon's eyes widened as if hearing her speak in such strength startled him more than the assembled guards. You've bewitched her, he accused Anthony. Seraphina lifted her chin. No spell, choice. She opened the cloak, revealing the healed bite from Anthony, sparkling faintly with silver threads. Nyra flared for emphasis. I chose a bond born of respect. Vargos remained silent inside Theon. She sensed the vacuum and realized even his wolf had turned away. Theon's shoulders sagged, fury curdling into emptiness. He drew a short blade, but his hand shook. Anthony's command rang out. Disarm and surrender, no harm will follow if you obey. Theon's gaze skittered across armed guards, archers on ridge ledges, and finally Seraphina, standing tall, eyes glowing with inner silver. Something inside him cracked. The blade clattered, rolling off the cliff's edge into mist. Guards moved in, binding his wrists. Theon offered no resistance, gaze hollow. As they led him to a transport, Seraphina felt no triumph, only a muted sadness for what power, twisted, could destroy. Back at the palace gates, Valen awaited with shackles reinforced for wolves, unused now that Vargos lay silent. He escorted Theon inside. Anthony dismounted, then reached to help Seraphina down. Their hands met, pulses synchronized. Captain Thalia approached. He'll await tribunal. My guards report his wolf won't speak. Sometimes silence is a mercy, Seraphina murmured, Nyra giving a soft, sympathetic whine. Anthony guided her toward warmth, but she paused at the threshold, turning to Cassandra jogging up the steps. Cassandra flashed a relieved grin. No arrows fired. I call that success. Success and closure, Seraphina agreed. That night the palace celebrated quietly. No banners, no fanfare, just warmth and music drifting through corridors as staff exhaled collective relief. Seraphina sat by the hearth in Anthony's private library, quilt around her shoulders. He crouched to add another log, sparks swirling. She watched firelight paint his profile. You protected me, but more. You waited. I won't forget. Anthony straightened, eyes reflecting flame. Waiting wasn't sacrifice. It was hope. Nyra padded forward inside, nudging Kailas in greeting. Seraphina felt the answering brush of his wolf, rough affection tempered by respect. They spoke long into night, of reforms for Omegas, joint charity routes, gardens Cassandra might oversee. Plans felt like promises rather than cages. At midnight, as logs settled to embers, Isara appeared in the doorway. Moon reaches zenith, she said. Time for vows of your choosing. Seraphina rose, cloak slipping to reveal a simple white dress. Anthony offered his hand. She accepted. They followed Isara down quiet halls into the heart of the mountain, a circular chamber carved of crystalline stone. Water trickled along grooves, catching moonlight pouring from an oculus above and scattering it into dancing shards. Isara waited at the rim, staff grounded. The chamber listens. Speak truth only. Anthony turned to Seraphina. Your voice first. She breathed the cool air. Nyra inhaled with her. I stand free. Not because chains were broken for me, but because I broke them with help. I choose you, not to shield me from darkness, but to stand with me in light. Anthony's eyes shone wet. I stand free as well. I choose you, because your strength teaches mine. Kailas hummed approval. Nyra pressed close, tail twirling, and Seraphina stepped nearer. No grand ceremony, just this. She offered her wrist. May I mark you too? Equal. Anthony's breath caught. Yes. She extended claws newly learned, small, silver, and nicked his skin gently. Blood welled, bright against pale. She leaned, seating her own bite softly at the juncture of shoulder and neck. Energy rippled, cool and hot, starlight swirling through veins. Anthony groaned, not in pain, but in wonder. Kailas loosed a deep, joyous roar. Nyra answered with a ringing howl. The chamber thrummed, crystalline walls reflecting their merged aura. Silver, gold, twilight blue. Light settled, heartbeats calmed. Anthony cradled Seraphina's face, foreheads resting together. She felt complete. Not perfect, but whole, cracks filled with gold like repaired pottery. They emerged into sunrise. Snow on peaks blushed rose gold. Staff and dignitaries gathered quietly in the courtyard, sensing shift without needing explanation. Cassandra waited near a fountain, eyes shining. Valen stood to her right, Captain Thalia to her left. Anthony addressed the small crowd. Today begins a new age, one built on consent, strength, and shared voice. Seraphina stepped forward, Nyra steady inside. I was once taught to fear my own words. Now I use them to build. Applause rose. Soft, respectful. Wolves in distant forests howled, echoes rolling across valleys, each note a stone laid in the foundation of something better. Seraphina found that days in the mountains passed like pages in a beloved book, slow enough to savor, quick enough to leave her wanting to read on. The morning after the courtyard gathering, Anthony invited her to tour Calum Peak's hidden places, vaulted libraries carved straight into bedrock, glass-roofed conservatories where winter roses bloomed crimson against snow, a training ring that overlooked a cliff so sheer it felt like the edge of the world. Everywhere they walked, people bowed with genuine respect, yet no one groveled or flinched as she had grown used to in Bloodthornne. She tried to return every nod, every greeting, letting the warmth seep into cracks she hadn't realized were still there. Cassandra accompanied them at first, noting schedules on a slim tablet, while sneaking appreciative glances at statuary and hanging gardens. Valen joined occasionally, discussing plans for a new medical wing where injured Omegas from any pack could seek care without permission from abusive alphas. Seraphina listened, offered suggestions, and caught herself smiling more than she spoke. Each time she did, Anthony's answering smile lit his whole face, as if her happiness fed something inside him. Nyra and Kalis traded silent nudges of contentment in the background, like companions sharing a quiet joke. 4 days after Theon's arrest, the Royal Council delivered a verdict: permanent removal of his title, exile to a remote border outpost, and appointment of an interim alpha drawn from among Riverfang and Raventhorn elders to stabilize Bloodthornne's territory. News arrived while Seraphina, Cassandra, and Isara sat in a sun-drenched atrium, weaving plans for a cross-pack Luna symposium. Isara broke the seal on the council's missive, read, and looked up, her smile subtle but unmistakably pleased. It is finished, she said. No appeal, no audience. Theon will live, but he will rule nothing greater than his own regrets. Seraphina exhaled a breath she hadn't noticed holding. Nyra released a soft rumble of relief. Cassandra pumped a quiet fist in the air and muttered, "About time." That evening, as dusk tilted the snowcaps into lilac shadows, Anthony found Seraphina in the palace greenhouse, crouched beside a row of young camellia shrubs. Earth stained her fingertips. She had insisted on helping the gardeners transplant seedlings despite the chill. She stood as he approached, brushing soil from her palms. "Planting root?" he teased gently. "Feels right," she said. "These will bloom when winter ends. Something to look forward to." He regarded her for a long moment, then offered a folded parchment. "Council requests you attend tomorrow's open assembly to formalize next steps for Bloodthornne and present the new sanctuary accords. Only if you wish." She took the parchment. "I'll go. Standing before them can be intense." She met his eyes, silver rims gleaming in the lamp-lit glass house. "I've stood before worse." Kalis hummed approval. Nyra echoed, confidence surging. Anthony reached to tuck a stray lock of hair behind her ear, marveling at her composure. She caught his hand, turning it over. A thin scar crossed his wrist. Old training mishap, he'd once explained. She pressed her lips to it, unexpected tenderness. His breath hitched. Kalis thumped his tail inside. Later, she and Cassandra spread scrolls across their suite's table, drafting proposals, rotating observer teams to audit border packs, scholarship funds for Omega education, traveling mediators for interpact disputes. They argued amiably over funding ratios and scheduling until midnight, then collapsed into laughter when Cassandra's stylus rolled off the table for the 5th time. "You realize," Cassandra said, cheeks flushed with wine and fatigue, "we're redesigning Wolf Society between cups of chamomile." Seraphina leaned back, stretching sore shoulders. "Someone has to. And who better than a once silent Luna and her dangerously organized attendant?" Cassandra grinned. "Imagine telling our younger selves this." "My younger self wouldn't believe the sky could look this wide," Seraphina said softly. Naira interjected, "Play now, think later." Seraphina snorted, surprising Cassandra. "What?" "My wolf thinks we should sleep." She rose, squeezing Cassandra's shoulder. "Tomorrow we conquer councils." Sleep found her quickly, dreamless, peaceful. She woke before dawn to a snow-bright hush. Pulling on a wool cloak, she tiptoed to the balcony and breathed icy air. Somewhere in the forest below, real wolves sang to the fading stars. Naira lifted her head inside, took a deep lungful, then slid closer than ever, as though trying to look through her eyes. Seraphina's chest warmed. "We're really alive," she whispered. Naira's answer was a simple yes, layered with indescribable joy. Later, after hot cider and fresh bread, she dressed for the assembly in a gown of slate gray edged with silver embroidery, elegant but understated, echoing Calum Peak's winter cliffs. Cassandra pinned her hair half up, leaving loose waves to soften the severity. At the doorway, Anthony waited in formal charcoal attire, silver torque at his throat like a crescent moon. They descended grand stairs side by side, guards flanking a respectful distance. Valen and Isara joined near the council hall. Inside, tiers were filled not only by elders, but by envoys from neighboring packs. Omegas granted seats for the first time, and human diplomats curious about shifting politics. Murmurs stilled when Anthony and Seraphina stepped onto the central dais. Anthony spoke first, acknowledging council authority, recounting Theon's violations, praising those who testified. Then he gestured to Seraphina. Thousands of eyes turned. She breathed in, Naira steadying her heartbeat. "I stand before you free. I was once an Omega daughter traded like coin, expected to kneel in permanent silence. Many here know that silence. You wear it in hidden scars and quiet glances. Today, I speak not to condemn the past, but to shape the future." She outlined the sanctuary accords, immediate creation of neutral havens for abused wolves, rotating audits, medical safe houses. She introduced Cassandra as liaison for civilian concerns and Valen as head of trauma health. Each point sparked murmurs, some skeptical, many hopeful. An elder raised a hand. "These measures require resources. How do you fund them?" Seraphina leveled her gaze, voice calm. "Through redirected tithes previously lining corrupt coffers, voluntary contributions from allied packs, and the Lycan treasury surplus. Healing our people is profitable in ways greed can't measure." A ripple of laughter, approving this time. Anthony stepped forward. "Calum Peak endorses the accords fully." After further questions, the council called for a vote. White stones placed in a crystalline basin for approval, black for denial. Seraphina counted stones drop by drop, pulse drumming. When the basin glowed white under hidden lights, cheers erupted. Cassandra squeezed her hand until bones creaked. Outside, snowflakes drifted lazy spirals from a pale sky as council members spilled into courtyards buzzing with new purpose. Seraphina stood near a frozen fountain, breath fogging, while elders congratulated her. Some called her Lady, others Luna. One young Omega approached shyly, eyes wide. "You said silence breaks," the girl whispered. "How?" Seraphina knelt so their eyes met. "Not all at once, sometimes it cracks like ice until water can speak, but every voice matters. Even whispers move mountains eventually." The girl smiled, small, determined, and ran to join her family. Cassandra exhaled, brushing a tear. You did that. In the afternoon, Anthony escorted Seraphina to a secluded cliff ledge where a wooden platform overlooked endless pines. They carried hot chocolate and sat on a fur-lined bench. Below, wind stirred white caps on treetops like waves on a dark sea. Anthony spoke quietly. When Kalis first sensed you, he called you sunrise before dawn. I didn't understand until today. He paused. Thank you for stepping into light even when it burned. Seraphina rested her head on his shoulder. Thank you for shielding me until I could lift my own shield. Kalis rumbled soft contentment. Nyra nuzzled him, sparks of playful energy leaping between the wolves. Anthony's arm circled her waist. Silence settled, not oppressive, but soothing. Days layered into weeks. Snowstorms came and went, but inside Caelum Peak, gardens thrived under glass and fires cracked cheerful hymns. Seraphina visited the medical wing often, sitting with recovering wolves who spoke in fragments about fear and hope. She told them pieces of her story, never the worst parts, but enough to prove survival. Sometimes she brought Cassandra, who taught breathing exercises. Other times Valen, who explained herbal compresses. Always Nyra, whose steady confidence radiated through Seraphina's eyes. One evening, while Anthony drafted trade treaties, Seraphina wandered alone to the grand hall. Moonlight spilled through arched windows, painting silver rivers on marble. She walked barefoot, savoring cool stone. Halfway down the aisle, she stopped. Nyra pressed forward. Let us run, the wolf suggested, a grin in her mental voice. Not inside, Seraphina answered, but laughter bubbled. Tomorrow in the lower meadow, she whispered. A deep growl answered, Kalis stepping from a side doorway. Anthony followed, raising a brow. Midnight stroll? Practicing speeches, she joked. He approached, slipping arms around her waist. She leaned into him, heart steady. Do you ever feel too lucky? She asked softly, as if happiness is borrowed time. He pressed a kiss to her hair. Then we'll spend it wisely before the lender calls. Nyra huffed fond agreement. Kalis nudged her side with gentle humor. A moon cycle later, Caelum Peak hosted a gathering unlike any before. Omegas from 5 territories, healers, traders, even human scholars studying cross-species governance. Lanterns turned courtyards into galaxies of flickering stars. At the center dais, Anthony stood regal. Seraphina, in a gown of starlight gray embroidered with tiny quartz shards, glowed beside him, equal height thanks to sensible boots beneath skirts. When Anthony introduced her, applause washed over stone walls echoing into distant valleys. Seraphina stepped forward, heart drumming a confident rhythm learned through pain and perseverance. She saw faces, Cassandra beaming, Valen nodding, Isara serene, Captain Thalia looking proud and protective. In the rear, the young Omega girl from Council Week perched on a planter, eyes shining. Seraphina began, voice carrying without strain. I was born into a world where silence kept me safe from beatings I could never truly escape. Silence became a coat I wore even in sunlight. Many here know its weight. But coats can be shed, and scars can become stories. I stand before you as proof that even the weakest voice can gather strength until it roars. She spoke of new accords, of healing houses already breaking ground, of trade monitored by transparency rather than fear. She thanked Isara for unearthing hidden bloodlines, Valen for healing without judgment, Cassandra for daring to hope, Anthony for loving with patience. She honored those who had yet to break silence, promising nothing would force them but time and choice. As she concluded, she glanced at Anthony, at their intertwined fingers, at wolves pacing just beyond sightlines. Her final words rose like sunrise over the crowd. I was born to be silent. I choose to speak. A hush followed, deeper than any she'd ever known, not of oppression, but of collective breath held in wonder. Then a howl rose from the forest, one wolf, then dozens, then hundreds. Wolves of Caelum Peak lifted muzzles skyward. Wolves of visiting packs echoed. Nira howled within Seraphina's chest, joy vibrating her bones. Without hesitation, Seraphina lifted her head and joined, voice threading with the chorus until distinction vanished. Wolf and woman singing one song under a silver moon. Kalis answered beside Nira, warm and fierce. Anthony's arm slipped around her waist as he tilted his own head back, adding his voice, kingly and wild. The night reverberated with promise, each note carrying into distant lands like sparks on winter wind, carrying seeds of change, carrying the sound of a broken mate who had remade herself into a queen. Snow melted early that year as though the land itself sensed change. A fortnight after the great gathering, Seraphina found herself on a grassy shelf above the palace with Anthony, Cassandra, Isara, and Valen. Wild crocuses speckled the slope, a waterfall stitched silver thread down the distant cliff, its roar softened by distance. Seraphina inhaled the scent of thawing earth. Nira padded within, eager. Tonight was the first full moon since the bond had sealed, and her wolf's excitement fizzed through every vein. Cassandra tightened the laces on her fur-lined boots. I still can't believe you convinced me to hike in the dark. You hiked border passes to bring witness letters, Seraphina reminded, grinning. This is leisure. Valen unpacked a slim medical kit and a thermos of mulled cider. Humor me. I like to be prepared. Isara stood apart, palms lifted to the indigo sky. Moon climbs soon, wolves ready your hearts. Anthony brushed Seraphina's knuckles. We don't have to shift. A quiet walk would satisfy me. No, Nira answered for her, a playful growl surfacing in Seraphina's chest. She laughed. I want to run. I've never shifted without fear. Tonight I choose it. Kalis rumbled approval, vibration echoing through Anthony's pulse. They moved to a clearing ringed by sentinel pines. Moonlight spilled over the ridge, bathing rock and grass in argent glow. Cold bit Seraphina's skin. Anticipation blazed hotter. Nira rose inside her like dawn. Ready? Ready? She closed her eyes and let go. The shift flowed not with pain but relief, bones lengthening, muscles rippling, coat bursting in a shimmer of dark silver. She landed on all fours, balanced, powerful, taller than she'd imagined. Nira's vision layered with her own, pitch-perfect night clarity, ears swiveling to catch Valen's breath, Cassandra's hushed gasp. Beautiful, Cassandra whispered. Anthony shifted beside her, Kalis unfurling into golden majesty. He lowered his head, nudging Nira's shoulder. Pride swelled between them. Isara's voice drifted like wind through pines. Run, children of the moon. Let the world feel your joy. They ran. Down the slope, over slick moss and scattered rock, paws finding sure footing where boots would slip. Wind howled past their ears, mingling with their own exuberant barks. Snowmelt spray cooled fur. Stars blurred overhead. Nira matched Kalis stride for stride, muscles singing. For the first time, Seraphina felt the world without armor. No bruises, no cages, only the rhythmic thunder of her heart beside another's. At a broad ledge, they skidded to a halt. The valley stretched below, forests dark and unfathomable, river gleaming like poured mercury. Kalis chuffed, and Nira echoed, their breath pluming silver. Anthony shifted back first, offering a hand as Seraphina followed. She stood in the moonlight, clothes returned by the bond's magic, hair wild, cheeks flushed. He touched her cheek. How does freedom taste? Like running water in starlight, she said, voice thick with wonder. She looked down the slope. We should build trails so the children who come to the refuge can do this safely. Done, he said without hesitation. They walked back at leisurely pace. Cassandra awaited with Valen at a small fire. She passed Seraphina a mug of cider. Your eyes glow even off the shift, she teased. They're learning to stay open, Seraphina replied. Valen raised his mug. May they never dim again. Morning broke pale gold over breakfast in the conservatory. Seraphina drizzled honey on warm bread while Cassandra read dispatches. Riverfang elders voted to ratify the sanctuary accords. That's 4 packs now. Anthony sipped coffee. Raventhorn pledged timber and builders yesterday. The refuge breaks ground next week. Nyra sent a contented flick of her tail. Progress. Later they visited the new hospital wing under renovation. Sun fell through tall windows onto crates of supplies and half-installed beds. Valen walked them through plans for a counseling suite, then showed Seraphina a small garden courtyard where patients could sit with lavender and rosemary. I thought we'd name it Seraphina's Rest, he said. Her throat tightened. Call it Dawn Garden, she suggested, so no one forgets darkness is temporary. Anthony slid an arm around her shoulders, silent approval warming her skin. That night they honored one last promise. Anthony guided Seraphina to a circular room of polished stone, the Hall of Names, where guest books recorded victories, tragedies, and the fallen. She carried her mother's faded locket. In the center stood a pedestal and quill. Seraphina opened the book to a blank page. Hand steady, she wrote, * Mira of Ashwood. Beloved mother, healer, dreamer of brighter moons. May her daughter carry her song. Ink glistened midnight blue. She set the quill down and pressed the locket into a niche below the inscription. She would have liked it here, she whispered. She is here, Anthony said, laying a gentle hand on her back. In you. She turned, brushing tears aside. Thank you for making space for memories, not just futures. Both matter, he answered. Weeks passed. Spring threaded green into pine boughs. Construction on Dawn Garden finished, and laughter of recovering wolves drifted through palace corridors. Cassandra took charge of symposium planning, unstoppable with color charts and seating maps. Valen trained new medics. Isara traveled to distant packs, sharing rites of healing. One quiet evening, Seraphina and Anthony strolled the outer ramparts just after sunset. Lanterns lined parapets, pools of amber against violet sky. Below, the valley shimmered with early fireflies. I never asked, he said, thumb stroking her knuckles. But what will you call yourself now? Luna? Queen? Either. Both? Or neither? She considered, watching Nyra chase a phantom moth in her mind's eye. Titles matter to others more than to me. But if I must choose, let them call me Voice. A voice for wolves who still whisper. Anthony smiled. Then I will stand beside the voice and ensure it carries far. She leaned into him, joy glowing warm as sunset embers. We still have work ahead. And time, he promised. Nyra curled close, content. Kalis rumbled affirmation, tail swishing. The wind shifted, bringing distant echoes of children's laughter from the hospital courtyard, the clang of builders raising beams for the refuge, the muted howls of wild wolves greeting night. Seraphina lifted her face to the breeze, breathing in the symphony of new beginnings. Each sound threaded through her like golden wire, holding her whole. She spoke, soft but unwavering. Sky is wide enough at last. Anthony's arm tightened. And it's ours to share. Far below, lanterns glittered like new stars scattered just for them. Wolves sang dusk into darkness, their chorus rich with promise. With Nyra's spirit twining through her heartbeat, Seraphina joined the song, her voice carrying over stone and water, over forests and villages, a steady, fearless note that would never again be lost to silence.